Chapter 1206. Boss, what is it? Lu Ping threw the beast skin scroll to Dabao. See for yourself. Supreme divine ability, sky-stealing sun-shifting art. 3 basic divine abilities, flower grafting wood, palace shifting feather, stealing beam and swapping pillar. Dabao covered the beast skin scroll, his small eyes glanced to the left, then to the right, only to find that everyone was trying hard to hold in their laughter. Only then did he realize that he was reading the contents of the beast skin scroll in a soft voice. Everyone was attracted by his shout of finding thieving heaven Laozu's inheritance, so they naturally heard everything he said. Dabao said angrily, okay, laugh if you want to, why do you have to hold it in so hard? Everyone burst into laughter. Normally speaking, great divine abilities or supreme divine abilities were mostly offensive and defensive, but there were also many unorthodox divine abilities with all kinds of wonderful methods. Strictly speaking, even Lu Ping's 3 pure true pupils was considered one of the unorthodox divine abilities. And Dabao's supreme divine ability inheritance cultivation method was even more peculiar. It could be said to be the most unorthodox of unorthodox methods. From the beginning to the end, this cultivation method inheritance did not aim to attack and kill enemies, but to teach people how to dodge, how to escape, how to hide, how to break formations, how to identify treasures, how to avoid tracking, in short, how to steal without anyone noticing. And among all these divine ability inheritances, the most profound was how to break formations. Back then, the reason why Thieving Heaven Laozu refined the Thieving Heaven Divine Axe was to have some achievements on the path of breaking formations. There was no formation in the world that could not be broken, it only depended on the time needed to break the formation, the strength of one's strength, and the clumsiness of the method. Sky-stealing sun-shifting art relied on the ingenuity and concealment of the formation, and the price to pay was mainly time. In order to covet the rare herbs in Longevity Grotto Heaven, Thieving Heaven Laozu spent a total of 50 years managing this inheritance, and finally avoided 9 profound towers' eyes and ears, secretly opening a gap in 9 profound towers formation. But in the end, man proposes, heaven disposes. Thieving Heaven Laozu actually died in the hands of Longevity Grotto Heaven's Wood Luan Fei race. All of his plans failed. With Dabao's current cultivation level, he could barely cultivate the sky-stealing sun-shifting art. However, he could only focus on the basic divine powers at most. It wasn't easy to master all of them. Right now, I'm afraid that the 9 Profound Tower has already set up an inescapable net outside the 9 Profound Mountain. I'm afraid that once we reveal ourselves, we'll be surrounded and attacked by the entire 9 Profound Tower. Lu Ping and Green Fox arrived at the end of the tunnel. This was the exit of the Thieving Heaven relic. Then what should we do? Actually, it is not impossible to force our way out. 9 Mystical Tower does not know that all of us have entered the Thieving Heaven inheritance. There should be a group of people outside 9 Mystical Mountain guarding against the people who entered the Thieving Heaven inheritance. We can catch them off guard. Lu Ping shook his head slightly and said, the 9 Mystical Tower isn't a fool. They've already fallen for our trap once, so how could they possibly give us another chance? We're alone, and this is the 9 Mystical Tower's territory. No matter what, we don't have the upper hand. Green Fox said, then what should we do? Since the 9 Profound Tower has already confirmed that the Thieving Heaven relic is in the 9 Profound Mountain, they will find it sooner or later. Lu Ping smiled and said, it is easy for us to leave this place, and the 9 Profound Tower cannot surround us. However, I am worried that the 9 Profound Tower's cultivators will chase after us after we leave. With the 9 Profound Tower's influence in the Central Plains, it is not an exaggeration to say that there is no place for us to hide in the Central Plains. Easy. Green Fox was slightly surprised and said, as long as we can avoid their attacks, how will they know that we have entered the Thieving Heaven relic? We were clearly chased out of the 9 Profound Mountain by them. I am afraid that they will still be guarding the 9 Profound Mountain, waiting for the person who entered the Thieving Heaven relic to come out. Lu Ping smiled and said, that is true, but it is inevitable that the 9 Profound Tower's people will chase after us. Outside the 9 Mysterious Mountain, Chang Sansai was already so bored that he was about to fall asleep. The Yin-Yang Pavilion Master looked at the 5-element Pavilion Master beside him and said, over 10 days have already passed. 5th Junior Brother, is there still no activity in the 9 Mysterious Mountain? Could it be that they have already left? The 5 Elements Pavilion Master's face turned stiff. From the Yin and Yang Pavilion Master's words, it was obvious that the Yin and Yang Pavilion Master suspected that the formation he had set up in the 9 Profound Mountain had already been avoided. Thus, he said with dissatisfaction, the thieving heaven Laozu is the best at hiding things. Perhaps the person who entered the relic is still looking for something inside. The Yin and Yang Pavilion Master was embarrassed, but after thinking about it, he felt that the Yin and Yang Pavilion Master was right. Thus, he asked the First Origin Pavilion Master, Wei Zhan, eldest senior brother, in my opinion, the sect should just send 1 or 2 great cultivators to guard this place. With our cooperation, when the time comes, Lu Tianping and the others will be easily captured. Why do we need to waste time here? Wei Zhan glanced at him and said, in the beginning, when we set up the ambush on the 9 Profound Mountain, you were the one who was the most proactive. Now, you are the one who has the least confidence. If the thieving heaven Laozu is going to alarm the great cultivators of our sect just because of one Lu Tianping, then where do we hide our faces? The Yin and Yang Pavilion Master chuckled. Then, Chang Sansai, who was beside him, said casually, in the end, the thieving heaven's relic is just not worth the attention of the sect. Although the thieving heaven Laozu was quite famous in the past, he was after all only a mid-Dharma adept. He has stolen many things, but from the treasures that have been unearthed from the thieving heaven's relic, none of them are able to tempt the old demons of the sect. It's just that there are a lot of them. Naturally, they are not worth the attention of our dignified Holy Land sects. Chang Sansai's words were reasonable, but coupled with his sloppy demeanor, when these words were heard by others, it sounded like he was mocking and ridiculing their own sect. Fortunately, the people in the 9 Profound Tower seemed to be used to it. At this moment, the Yin and Yang Pavilion Master thought of something and said, that year, the thieving heaven Laozu really entered one of the caves of our sect. If these people found the traces left behind by the thieving heaven Laozu and sneaked into our cave again, what should we do? Don't worry, that year, the thieving heaven Laozu only entered the longevity cave after breaking through our sect's protective formation. Our sect has already learned its lesson, and not only did we strengthen the protective formation, every 50 years, the protective formation will be activated again and become unrecognizable. If we want to break through the formation, we will have to start all over again. Wei Zhan said solemnly. But then again, recently, the whereabouts of the Laozu in our sect seem to be a little uncertain. Could it be that something big is going to happen? Chang Sansai spat out the wooden stick in his mouth and asked Wei Zhan, Boss, you should know something here, right? Wei Zhan chuckled and said, other than Mara, what else could it be? Previously, the magic cloud city outside the Endless Mountains was destroyed by the Peacock royalty and Mara's army. Then, it was occupied by the demon clan of the Endless Mountains. How could the Lingyun Valley suffer such a big loss? Both sides fought openly and secretly for the Magic Cloud City, but unexpectedly, Mara's army took advantage of it. It was said that in a battle, both the human and demon clans lost more than 10 Dharma adepts under the siege of Mara, including 2 late Dharma adepts. In order to annihilate this Mara army, both sides had to temporarily put aside the fight for Magic Cloud City. The 6-winged Golden Cicada clan and Skyward Pavilion of the Endless Mountains joined forces with the other factions and finally defeated this Mara army. At the same time, both sides paid a huge price. After this battle, the calamity of Mara had gradually begun to spread deep into the heart of Middle-earth. The 9 Shen Tower could be said to be ready for battle. The great adepts in the sect were constantly sent out to patrol the territories controlled by the 9 Shen Tower, and at the same time, they gathered all the factions around the 9 Shen Tower to prepare for the upcoming calamity of Mara. How could they have the energy to put so much attention on the thieving heaven's inheritance? Furthermore, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 5th ranked direct disciples of the 9 Shen Tower were currently gathered at 9 Shen Mountain. If they still could not take down the thieving heaven's inheritance, the 9 Shen Tower would have nothing else to say. Stealing the sky and switching the sun, could this be what it means to steal the sky and switch the sun? Although the entrance to this treasure trove is within the 9 Shen Mountain, the truth is that the treasure itself is attached to the 9 Shen Mountain's sect-protecting formation. No matter how the formation operates, the treasure will not leave the formation. Hence, we will always be able to find the longevity paradise in this treasure trove. Thieving Heaven Laozu truly lives up to his reputation as an extraordinary person. The Nine Xian Tower naturally has no lack of formation masters, but they never discovered that the sect-protecting formation has already been tampered with. This is truly a marvelous skill, worthy of the name Thieving Heaven. Lu Ping and Qing, who discussed the stealing the sun and stealing art on the beast skin scroll while corroborating with the Thieving Heaven's inheritance. From time to time, they would click their tongues in wonder. And the true inheritor of this divine ability was currently opening a cave on a wall that had been opened, and this cave was a branch of a large spirit stone vein. Although the Nine Xian Tower would change the operation method of their sect-protecting formation every 50 years, they never thought that the Thieving Heaven's inheritance would be attached to the sect-protecting formation in an unimaginable way and always be connected to the longevity Grotto Heaven. And the most recent operation of the formation had placed the longevity Grotto Heaven and a large spirit stone vein together. And Lu Ping and the rest, who were about to leave, were once again stopped by Dabao. He wanted to steal the spirit stones in this spirit stone vein. Of course, he only had his eyes on top-grade spirit stones. As long as the Nine Xian Tower could not find this place, Lu Ping was naturally not in a hurry. Furthermore, stealing the spirit stone vein had become a technical job in Dabao's eyes. How could the Nine Xian Tower not discover that this spirit stone vein had never been stolen before? Stealing the sun and stealing art. This was the opportunity for Dabao to immediately start practicing this divine ability. Chapter 1207. How could he not leave any traces when he stole the spirit stone vein? It seemed that the sky-stealing sun-shifting art was the key to solving this problem. However, Dabao, who had just obtained this technique, did not seem to have the time to cultivate it. However, Lu Ping, Green Fox, and the others soon realized that they had underestimated Dabao's talent in this aspect. Although the sky-stealing sun-shifting art was a supreme divine power, Dabao seemed to be naturally familiar with this divine power. Even though he could not master even one of the basic divine powers in a short span of 10 days, the talent and achievements he had displayed in this aspect still left Lu Ping and the others dumbfounded. Dabao himself seemed to be extremely interested in this divine power, which formed a stark contrast to his usual laziness in cultivation. In more than 10 days, Dabao had mined most of the top-grade spirit stones in this branch vein. After another 10 days, Dabao began to remove the traces in the vein and backfill the robber's hole bit by bit. He also used a divine power that he had yet to master to disguise the robber's hole as a barren spirit vein. There are still many flaws in this method. If a mind seeker sees this, he will definitely notice that someone has touched the spirit vein here. If I can master the sky-stealing sun-shifting art, I can even change the location of the other spirit stones in the surroundings, making the distribution of spirit stones on the entire vein more reasonable. Even an ordinary mind seeker will not be able to detect it inadvertently. Dabao regretfully filled up the spirit vein tunnel, then restored the stone wall to its original state. Only then did he say, "Let's hope that the prospectors of the Nine Mystical Tower won't check this vein." As the saying went, the expert knows the ropes, while the layman enjoys the show. Dabao clapped his hands and stood up. Only then did he see that everyone, including Lu Ping and the others, were dumbfounded. Lu Ping was slightly puzzled. That's it. It's a complete spirit vein. Can a mind seeker tell? It would have been better if he didn't say this, but as soon as he said this, Dabao's tail instantly rose to the sky, and he said, "What do you know? If I was given a period of time to cultivate that stealing a beam and replacing a pillar divine ability, once I achieve initial success, then a half-baked or finder like Xian Wei would absolutely not be able to see through it." Everyone nodded like chickens pecking at rice. Amazing, amazing. Dabao was even more pleased with himself. However, Dabao's complacency only lasted for a moment. He saw Lu Ping divide up the small pile of top-grade spirit stones in the middle of the relic and said, Qing Hu, Qing Lang, and Qing Hu will take 50, Qing Hu and Qing Lang will take 30, and the rest who have reached the late core forging stage will get 10. As for the rest, they were all kept by Lu Ping with a wave of his sleeves. Dabao suddenly became anxious and said, Mine, you guys can't bully me like this. These spirit stones were dug out by me. Lu Ping glared at him and said, You're just a 4th stage core forging stage minor repairs. Do you think you can use the top-grade spirit stones? If you want the top-grade spirit stones, sure, but you'll have to increase your level to the late core forging stage first. Dabao's love for spirit stones was not because he was dissatisfied with Lu Ping's distribution. In fact, the number of top-grade spirit stones that Dabao had collected might not be less than that of Qing Hu and Qing Lang. It was just that Dabao's love for spirit stones was limitless, even if it was just a low-grade spirit stone. Perhaps this was a special characteristic of the spirit-seeking mice. The spirit stone vein that Dabao had excavated was only a branch of a large vein. It could not be compared to the top-grade spirit stones that Lu Ping had stolen from Yuanling Island. At that time, Lu Ping had stolen from the main vein, and the ratio of top-grade spirit stones was much higher than this branch vein. However, the number of top-grade spirit stones he had collected was still a huge amount. After finishing the exploration of the Thieving Heavens relic, Qing Hu asked worriedly, "How do you plan to leave this place?" The last time they had entered the relic, it was because Qing Hu and Lu Ping had continuously attracted the attention of the entire Jiushuan Tower. That was how Dabao had managed to enter the relic and use the divine space essence to successfully transport everyone here. However, it was actually easy to leave now. All he had to do was use the divine space essence. However, this way, he would not be able to retrieve the divine space essence. Once the Jiushuan Tower found the location of the divine space essence would definitely be exposed. Once the divine space essence was exposed, the consequences would undoubtedly be disastrous for Lu Ping: the theft of the Yuanling Island spirit stone vein, the death of the Yuan clan's formation grandmaster, Mr. Wen, the huge astronomical phenomenon in the sky above the divine space array, the resonance caused by the heaven creation relic, the death of the Yu Lin sect's great cultivator. All these mysteries would be revealed one by one. Thus, no matter what, Lu Ping would not take the risk of leaving this divine space essence here. After you leave the Jiushuan Tower's territory, head north and return to the Ying Tian courtyard. It just so happens that Zilan's cultivation is at a crucial point in her breakthrough, so I will have to stay here for a while. Furthermore, without you by my side, it will be easier for me to break out of the encirclement. Qing Hu knew that what Lu Ping said was easier, but in reality, if they stayed together, they would become a burden to Lu Ping. Even Qing Hu herself could not say that she would be of any help in the battle against the Jiushuan Tower's heirs. Although Qing Hu currently had the heaven-stealing divine axe, a spirit treasure that was far more powerful than her natal spirit treasure, the Xianhua Great Axe, which had reached the peak of spirit cultivation, the heaven-stealing divine axe's characteristics did not lie in its swift and fierce attacks. This did not match the characteristics of Qing Hu's own cultivation. In her hands, the heaven-stealing divine axe could at most be considered a temporary spirit treasure. However, the reason why Lu Ping was willing to stay in the Thieving Heaven inheritance for a while was not only because of the large spirit stone vein, but also because the purple crystal queen bee was at a critical point in her cultivation. Who had ever seen a purple crystal queen bee at the mid-core forging stage? At the very least, Lu Ping had never heard of it. In fact, after coming out of the Longevity Grotto Heaven, the purple crystal queen bee asked Lu Ping for a low-grade earth spirit object, then went into seclusion to brew royal jelly. Although the purple crystal queen bee had a bountiful harvest in the Longevity Grotto Heaven, with the purple crystal queen bee's advancement, Lu Ping was destined to be disappointed. Most of the purple crystal queen bee's royal jelly was used by the queen bee to increase her cultivation. Half a month's time was not enough to support the purple crystal queen bee's advancement, and it was not enough to support her through the most difficult period. However, the Thieving Heaven inheritance, which was drawn from the Jiushuan Tower, was enough to support the purple crystal queen bee through the most difficult period of cultivation. Qing Hu and the others left the Thieving Heaven inheritance one by one with the help of the spatial spirit. At this time, Lu Ping also let go of his hands and feet and prepared to do some meticulous preparations. After overcoming the first lightning tribulation, Lu Ping's physical body had once again improved significantly. However, it was now only as strong as a spiritual magic treasure. Although such a body was strong enough for cultivators of the same level, and was comparable to cultivators who had overcome the Second Lightning Tribulation, Lu Ping naturally would not give up on the opportunity to further strengthen his physical body. However, whether it was the 7 aperture pair or the immortal root, the best way to use them was not for Dharma adepts like Lu Ping. Other than strengthening a cultivator's physical body, the 7 aperture pair and the immortal root also had another important function, which was to significantly increase a cultivator's potential. From this point of view, the value of the 7 aperture pair and the immortal root was slightly higher than that of the Ashenwood pure jade fruit. However, there was another point to consider. In order to fully utilize the effect of increasing one's potential, the cultivator had to be a blood-refining minor repairs cultivator who had yet to enter the blood condensation stage. It would not work if the cultivator was old or had a high level of cultivation. Furthermore, once the cultivator had reached the Dharma stage, who would care about increasing one's potential? To be able to obtain such a treasure, other than those with heaven-defying luck like the blood-refining minor repairs, which cultivator was not a Dharma adept with a high level of cultivation? As the saying went, treasures could only be found by luck, not by searching for them. In fact, it also required one's ability as a foundation. And for the Dharma adepts who obtained such a treasure, unless it was for a close family member, who would be willing to leave such a treasure for the blood-refining minor repairs to improve their potential rather than use it themselves to increase the strength of their physical body? This was actually something that could not be helped. Rare treasures were already rare, and Dharma adepts often faced life and death situations with every step they took. In order to increase the strength of their physical body, they would not hesitate to give up or even waste the other effects of the spirit fruit. However, after thinking for a long time, Lu Ping decided to use the 7 aperture pair first. This was because this 7 aperture pair was ripe enough, and there might be some seeds left in the core. And in fact, Lu Ping's guess was not wrong. Within this 7 aperture pair, there were indeed 2 dark green seeds. After being carefully taken out by Lu Ping, he handed them over to Lu Daohua. Cultivating spirit herbs, spirit fruits, and spirit trees was not only something that the Wood Luan race was good at. Lu Daohua, who was born from the spirit demon race, also had a natural advantage in this aspect. Although Lu Ping had another refined Dharma alchemy furnace in his hands, Lu Ping was, after all, not familiar with the heaven-stealing furnace. Furthermore, the Nh1 cauldron had already condensed 2 treasures and had been nurtured by Lu Ping's inner yuan for more than 100 years. He was already very familiar with it. However, with a treasure-level alchemy furnace as a backup, for an alchemy grandmaster like Lu Ping, he could use it to try out a new method of alchemy, and that was the continuous alchemy furnace division secret technique. In short, in the process of alchemy, the Nh1 cauldron would be the main, and the heaven-stealing furnace would be the auxiliary. The 2 alchemy furnaces would cooperate with each other, and the heaven-stealing furnace would share the difficulty of alchemy with the Nh1 cauldron. In the end, it would achieve a method to increase the efficiency of alchemy and the success rate of alchemy. And this method was a secret alchemy technique that only alchemy grandmasters could come into contact with. For alchemy, it was undoubtedly a serious challenge that had to be faced. At the same time, it was also against the fact that the rare herbs used to refine Dharma-level elixirs were extremely rare. Moreover, the efficiency of alchemy was low, and the success rate of alchemy was low. Chapter 1208. For alchemy grandmasters, the continuous furnace separation was a secret alchemy technique that they had to challenge. The main reason for this was that almost all of the spirit herbs needed to refine Dharma stage elixirs could be regarded as natural treasures, especially for some of the spirit herbs needed for elixirs with special effects. However, unlike the elixirs before the core forging stage, which had a fixed number of 10 elixirs in each furnace, a large portion of Dharma stage elixirs were not like this. After being successfully refined with a 100% success rate, only 3 or 5 elixirs could be refined out of the furnace. Some of the more precious elixirs could only be refined out of the furnace. Elixirs that could be used to enhance the strength of the physical body were often extremely precious and difficult to refine. The Ashwood pure jade fruit had only been refined by Lu Ping, and he had used the spirit water nourishing elixir cultivation technique. The reason why Lu Ping was able to concoct 3 spirit water body nourishing pellets from the blood skeleton flower was because the blood skeleton flower was mature enough and its medicinal effects were beyond Lu Ping's expectations. The 7-orifice pear in Lu Ping's hand wasn't enough to concoct more than 2 spirit water body nourishing pellets in one go. But if he used the continuous cauldron pellet separation, he might be able to concoct one more. There were naturally many things to pay attention to when using continuous furnace separation. At least the quality of the supporting elixirs could not be too different from the main alchemy furnace. Otherwise, the quality of the elixir would also be weakened. As for the spirit fire needed for alchemy, under the NH1 cauldron was naturally the silver spirit fire, and the spirit fire under the heaven stealing cauldron was a little unique. It was a 6-inch high-grade earth-level spirit fire. It was a strange spirit fire that Lu Ping had found in the North Sea volcanoes. At that time, it was only 4 inches long, and it was called the 4-inch spirit fire. Now, after a period of growth, the 4-inch spirit fire had devoured a mid-grade and high-grade earth-level spirit fire in Lu Ping's hands, and had successfully advanced to become a 6-inch spirit fire. This method of growing by devouring other spirit fires was also an extremely rare type of spirit fire of heaven and earth, and it had a very deep understanding of alchemy. However, this type of flame had an extremely unique property. Every time the spiritual flame was upgraded, it could only be used to refine spirit pills that corresponded to the level of the spiritual flame. At this moment, the spiritual flame was 6 inches long and could only be used to refine late core forging spirit pills. If it wanted to refine early Dharma spirit pills, it would be impossible, unless the 6-inch flame could be upgraded to a 7-inch flame that could be used to refine Dharma spirit pills. At this time, there was a flash of fire in Lu Ping's hand, and a spirit fire started burning in his palm. It was indeed a low-grade heaven-level spirit fire. However, this spirit fire was not very suitable for refining elixirs, and it was also slightly violent in the forging of weapons. It could only be used to refine spiritual items. And at the moment when this spirit fire appeared in Lu Ping's hand, the 6-inch spirit fire that was floating in mid-air suddenly jumped into Lu Ping's palm like a cat that had smelled fish. With a series of crackling sounds, the two sparks actually merged together. More accurately, the low-grade heaven-level spirit fire was actually slowly being devoured by the 6-inch spirit fire. The 6-inch spirit fire itself did not change much, but the line of fire gradually grew from its original 6-inch length to 7 inches. It's done. Lu Ping's heart leaped with joy. The 7-inch spirit flame was now a genuine, low-grade heaven-level spirit fire. Moreover, in terms of refining early Dharma realm medicinal pellets, even the silver spirit flame could not compare to it. Although this kind of spirit fire could become the best spirit fire for refining elixirs at any stage of cultivation, it was a pity that this kind of spirit fire could only forever be used to refine elixirs of a certain stage. The true test of a cultivator's alchemy skills was whether or not he could split his attention to take care of the situation in the other alchemy furnace during the process of refining elixirs. This was a test of the cultivator's inner yuan, divine will, alchemy skills, and willpower. Fortunately, Lu Ping had long been prepared for this. Although the process of refining the 7 orifices elixir was a kind of torture, Lu Ping still managed to persevere and successfully split the elixirs between the alchemy furnaces during the solidification stage. Furthermore, it did not cause any damage to the solidification of the 7 orifices elixir in the main alchemy furnace. Finally, the 2 alchemy furnace treasures opened at the same time, and 2 elixirs, one big and one small, flew out of the alchemy furnace and were collected by Lu Ping, who had long been prepared. The 7 orifices elixir was originally considered a mid-Dharma stage elixir, but after using the alchemy technique, the 7 orifices elixir in the main alchemy furnace was still at the mid-Dharma stage, while the smaller 7 orifices elixir in the auxiliary alchemy furnace could only be considered an early Dharma stage elixir. Fortunately, although Lu Ping's cultivation level was at the mid-Dharma stage, early Dharma stage elixirs were only slightly less effective for him, but they were not completely useless. The 2 7 orifices elixirs were refined by Lu Ping in succession, and it took him another 10 days or so. Lu Ping could clearly feel that his physical body had been strengthened. Although it was not enough to break through the shackles of the spirit cultivation stage, it was much closer. At least in front of a great practitioner who had passed the second thunder trial, The strength of Lu Ping's physical body was nothing to be afraid of. From the time that the 7 orifices elixir was refined to the time that Lu Ping had completely refined it, another month had passed. By now, Qing Hu and the others must have already left the 9 Shen Towers territory and were heading north. Furthermore, with the 9 Shen Towers methods, they must have already found out where Qing Hu and the others were. Lu Ping just did not know if the 9 Shen Towers practitioners would have the patience to wait in the 9 Shen Mountain after such a long wait. Lu Ping waved his hand, and a space door opened. The purple crystal bee king, which had grown to a size of 2 feet after advancing to the mid-core forging stage, flapped its wings and flew out of the House of Gold. Big brother, I've advanced to the mid-core forging stage. The purple crystal bee queen's face was filled with joy, and Lu Ping's face was also full of smiles. Not bad. In the cultivation world, there had never been a purple crystal bee king in the core forging stage, let alone a queen bee that had advanced to the mid-core forging stage. When Zilan advanced to the core forging stage, she was able to brew royal jelly of higher quality. Now that she had advanced to the mid-core forging stage, Lu Ping wondered if she had gained some other abilities. Big brother, look. A small jade bottle was handed to Lu Ping. Inside the bottle was the royal jelly brewed by the purple crystal bee queen, which had advanced to the mid-core forging stage. Although Zilan had used most of the royal jelly brewed from the honey in the spiritual herb garden in the longevity grotto heaven to increase her cultivation, it was not easy for her to keep this much. Under the purple crystal queen's hopeful gaze, Lu Ping opened the jade bottle. The essence of 100 flowers, which was purer than the royal jelly from before, spread out from the jade bottle. Lu Ping's expression gradually changed from intoxication to surprise, and finally, a trace of shock. After Lu Ping quickly put away the jade bottle, he stuck a spirit sealing talisman on it. Then, he asked excitedly, "Did you brew this after advancing to the mid-core forging stage?" The purple crystal queen was a little nervous when she saw the constant changes in Lu Ping's expression. At this moment, when she saw Lu Ping's irrepressible joy, the purple crystal queen smiled proudly and said, "Of course." However, as if she suddenly thought of something, the purple crystal queen was a little discouraged. It's just that after Zilan advanced to the mid-core forging stage, the amount of royal jelly that she can brew has been greatly reduced. Previously, she could extract 1 bottle out of 10 bottles of purple crystal honey. Although the quality of the royal jelly has increased, she may not be able to extract 1 bottle out of 20 bottles. At this time, Lu Ping had already calmed down. He nodded and said, "If such a heaven-defying treasure could be produced in large quantities, that would be a real problem." In this small bottle of royal jelly, Lu Ping not only detected the pure and thick taste of the purple crystal bee's essence of 100 flowers, but it also had a greater auxiliary and enhancement effect than the previous royal jelly. However, all of this paled in comparison to the new thing that appeared in the royal jelly. Lu Ping felt the power of vitality in the royal jelly brewed by the purple crystal queen bee, which had advanced to the mid-core forging stage. After the purple crystal queen bee advanced to the mid-core forging stage, it condensed the essence of 100 flowers to refine the purple crystal royal jelly. It actually melted the vitality of the 100 flowers into it, causing the purple crystal royal jelly to suddenly become a treasure comparable to a longevity pill. It could be used to directly increase a cultivator's lifespan. With Lu Ping's current knowledge as an alchemy grandmaster, he was 80 to 90% sure that he could use the purple crystal royal jelly as the base and combine it with some other spirit herbs to refine a new kind of longevity pill. In terms of the concentration of vitality contained in the purple crystal royal jelly, this kind of longevity pill with the purple crystal royal jelly as the base might not be able to increase one's lifespan as much as the myriad wonder jade nectar. However, with the purple crystal queen bee, Lu Ping could continuously obtain the royal jelly. In other words, once Lu Ping was able to concoct this kind of longevity pill, it would be an endless supply. In fact, the myriad wonder jade nectar could be produced continuously in the myriad poison nectar or the myriad poison source liquid. However, there was a harsh condition, and that was that Lu Ping had to constantly search for highly poisonous places so that the myriad poison nectar could absorb the poison and condense a drop of the myriad wonder jade nectar. Not only was this process dangerous for Lu Ping, But Lu Ping also did not have the time to search for highly poisonous places all over the world just for a few drops of the myriad wonder jade nectar. Moreover, the speed at which the myriad wonder jade nectar was condensing was extremely slow, and it was also extremely small. It was not as satisfying as the purple crystal royal jelly. Outside of the Nine Shen Mountain, the master of the yin and yang building could no longer remain calm. He spoke to Wei Zhen, who was beside him. Boss Wei, waiting like this is not a solution. Who knows whether Lu Tianping will come or not? We have already received news that the Cyan Fox 9 bandits have appeared near the Yulon River and are heading north. Wei Zhen did not pay attention to the master of the yin and yang building. Instead, he reached out his hand and waved in midair. A sound-transmitting talisman appeared out of nowhere in his palm. Wei Zhen chuckled and said, "Second brother, the sect has already ordered that all disciples are not allowed to leave the sect's territory. Even if you want to chase after them, I'm afraid you can't go against the sect's orders, right?" At this moment, not only the master of the yin and yang building, but even Chang Sansai and the master of the Five Elements Pavilion had solemn expressions on their faces. They no longer cared about the fleeing Cyan Fox 9 bandits. They asked in a serious voice, "Something big is going to happen to the sect. Boss Wei, do you know what it is?" Chapter 1209. The Nine Mystical Tower had ordered all of its disciples to stay out of its territory. The Yin-Yang Tower Master and the others immediately frowned and asked, "Boss Wei, did the sect send out something big?" Wei Zhen nodded his head and said, "It said that during this period of time, the demonic Luo army has emerged from all over the Central Plains, causing the entire Central Plains to be in a state of panic. Recently, more and more demonic Luos have appeared within the Nine Mystical Houses' sphere of influence. The various patrol teams are simply unable to kill them all. Furthermore, there's already news that they've encountered at least 2 Asuras in the process of exterminating the demonic Luos. Furthermore, the demonic Luos within our sect's sphere of influence have begun to gather." What? It was not only the Two Rights Pavilion Master, even the carefree Chang Sansai was startled when he heard this. He said, "The evil Luo sect has gathered on a large scale. What do they intend to do? Could it be that they intend to besiege the Nine Profound Pavilion?" Wei Zhen shook his head and said, "It's hard to say. It's not like Mara's army has never gathered to attack a sacred land in the history of the cultivation world. There's no guarantee that they're not targeting our Nine Mystical Tower." The Yin-Yang Tower Master trembled and said, "Even if they're targeting us, we'll just make sure they don't return." No one said anything. They knew that the Yin-Yang Tower Master was right, and the Nine Mystical Tower naturally had the confidence to do so. However, if Mara's army really did gather to attack the Nine Mystical Tower, then it wouldn't be a battle that would end in a short period of time. How could there be no deaths in a battle? There's another piece of news. Wei Zhen's expression was somewhat solemn. Someone has discovered the tracks of Qing Hu and the others. They're already near the Yulon River, and they're still heading north. Everyone looked at each other, and in the end, the Yin-Yang Tower Master said in disbelief, "That can't be. They still have companions trapped in the thieving Heaven's inheritance." At this time, Chang Sansai interrupted and asked, "Is there any news of Lu Tianping?" A look of approval appeared on Wei Zhen's face. He said, "That's the strange part. The news didn't mention Lu Tianping, which means that he isn't with Qing Hu and the others. That's strange. Could it be that Lu Tianping wants to charge into the trap we set up himself?" The Five-Element Pavilion Master asked curiously. He knew how much effort had been put into the Nine Mysterious Mountain recently. Wouldn't it be too much of a pity if it were to be wasted like this? The Yin and Yang Brothel Master curled his lips and said, "Perhaps Lu Tianping is no longer in the vicinity, and his companions have already left. How can he be our match by himself? Or perhaps the person who entered the thieving Heaven inheritance has already secretly left. Impossible." The master of Five Elements Pavilion was very confident in his trap and said, "As long as the people who entered the thieving Heaven inheritance are still in the Nine Shen Mountain, there is no way they won't be discovered by me. I can even borrow the power of the sect's protective formation to monitor the entire Nine Shen Mountain. They won't be able to escape." They all looked surprised. They didn't expect the master of the Five Elements Tower to have reached such a level of attainment in formations. He was able to use the sect-protecting formation for his own use, and they didn't even realize it. Just when everyone was thinking about their own matters, the master of Five Elements Pavilion's expression suddenly changed. He said, "Oh no, someone suddenly appeared in the Ninefold mountain." Everyone was shocked. Wei Yizhen opened his mouth and asked, "Where?" The master of Five Elements Pavilion pointed with his finger and said, "Northwest, he is currently escaping towards that direction." Wei Yizhen shouted, "Fifth brother, stop him. The rest of you, follow me." At the bottom of the tunnel of the Thieving Heaven inheritance, Lu Ping was holding the key that Dabao used to enter the inheritance. It was an axe that was less than a foot long. It looked almost the same as the Thieving Heaven divine axe, but it was only a high-grade magic tool. But at this time, Lu Ping was carefully playing with the axe in his hand. He smiled lightly and said, "This is a bit interesting. I didn't notice it before." He slammed his palm against the stone wall at the side of the tunnel, and a series of runes immediately appeared on the stone wall. At the same time, a simple teleportation formation gradually took shape, and in the center of the formation, a small stone that was originally crystal clear suddenly became incomparably resplendent. Lu Ping didn't activate the teleportation array. Instead, he reached out and plucked the small stone from the center of the teleportation array. The glowing stone immediately turned back into a crystal clear void spirit, and the simple teleportation array began to crumble. Countless runes wandered on the stone wall and returned to their original positions. And at this time, Lu Ping slammed his palm on the stone wall. A bluish-purple light immediately entered the stone wall. With a loud boom, the giant stone in the valley outside the inheritance suddenly split open. A door opened and Lu Ping calmly walked out. The giant stone closed. Lu Ping looked around. Then, light flashed under his feet and he immediately flew towards the northwest direction. Not long after Lu Ping flew out, the master of Five Elements Pavilion immediately discovered Lu Ping. At this time, Lu Ping was slightly startled and said, "What a brilliant formation." The master of Five Elements Pavilion had set up many formation traps in the Ninefold mountain and borrowed the power of the entire Ninefold mountain's protective formation. After flying for a while, Lu Ping found that he was stuck in a swamp. His flying speed suddenly decreased by a lot. The Ninefold Tower's protective formation was not a short distance away from the Ninefold mountain. To be able to use the protective formation as one's own, this kind of method was not simple. It seemed that the person who set up the formation was no doubt a formation master. Among the Ninefold Tower's 9 direct lineage masters, the master of Five Elements Pavilion, Hu Yang, was the most proficient in formations. Originally, when Lu Ping covered Dabao to sneak into the Thieving Heaven's inheritance, he constantly avoided his surveillance. Moreover, he also discovered the hidden formation of Ninefold Tower on the hill. This made the master of Five Elements Pavilion lose a lot of face. This also made Lu Ping look down on him. But today, he saw that this person's attainments in formations were really good. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ping's divine sense detected no less than 3 rays of light approaching him from different directions. But at this time, Lu Ping was deeply trapped in the spiritual energy quagmire of the 5-elemental array formation, unable to extricate himself. This is really troublesome. If I get surrounded, even if I don't die, a layer of my skin will be peeled off. Lu Ping flipped his right palm and the Linglong cauldron appeared in his hand. The invisible spiritual energy whirlpool around him was immediately drawn in, and under the control of the Linglong wine cauldron, it was slowly smoothed out. Lu Ping also temporarily escaped from the formation quagmire. The ray of light under his feet suddenly brightened, and he continued to fly towards the northwest. However, before he could fly for more than 5 kilometers, Lu Ping's body suddenly became heavy, as if his entire body was suddenly pressed down by a mountain. Another formation. The spiritual energy under Lu Ping's feet quickly gathered, and a huge spiritual energy lotus suddenly bloomed. It was exactly the same as the rank 9 white jade lotus in Lu Ping's heart space, and it immediately blocked the formation below him. Lu Ping's body relaxed, and the ray of light under his feet shone even brighter as he sped up towards the outside of 9 Profound Mountain. However, Just these two restrictions had greatly shortened the distance between Lu Ping and his pursuers. Although Lu Ping's successive escapes had greatly shocked the 9 profound towers cultivators, Wei Zhan had already arrived several kilometers behind Lu Ping. He shouted, "Where do you think you're going?" The deafening roar brought with it waves of sound that caused Lu Ping to frown. Although Lu Ping did not care about this kind of sound attack, Lu Ping had already seen through the divine will hidden within the sound waves. Even so, Lu Ping had no choice but to be cautious. This person was obviously someone who had a high level of attainment in the practice of divine will. Although his level of practice was the same as Zhu Donghuang's at the mid-Dharma stage, the level of his divine will was no less than that of ordinary great adepts. If ordinary adepts of the same level fought with him, they would usually be at a disadvantage under this attack of his. Unfortunately, his opponent was Lu Ping, not to mention that Lu Ping had a terrifying level of divine will that far exceeded that of ordinary great adepts. Just the cloud sails and the jade soulfire would be enough to render this level of divine will attack useless, and it could even cause him to suffer greatly. However, right at this moment, a huge bell rose above Lu Ping's head. It was an imitation of the first calamity spirit treasure, the vast ocean bell. With a loud dang, a similarly huge sound wave surged and rolled towards the sound attack caused by the roar behind him. The two of them instantly disappeared into thin air. Wei Zhan's heart leaped with joy. This level of divine will was something that he was proud of, and the few remarkable powers that he had cultivated with his strong divine will were originally Wei Zhan's trump cards. Wei Zhan had originally wanted to use these few remarkable powers to gain the upper hand in the fight against the top disciples from the other holy lands. Unexpectedly, he had used them on Lu Ping first today. From Wei Zhan's point of view, although the person who was escaping had used an extremely strange sound wave to cancel out his roar, the divine will hidden within the roar was his real trump card. However, just as Wei Zhan was anticipating the person who was escaping in front of him to let out a cry of pain and then fall from the sky while clutching his head, he felt his divine will slash into a vast ocean. At most, it only made a few waves. Oh no! Wei Zhan's heart trembled. As an expert in the divine will, he naturally knew that this phenomenon occurred because the person in front of him had a much higher level of divine will cultivation than him. This feeling of punching air was a sign that the opponent had set a trap and was about to counterattack. Wei Zhan hurriedly withdrew his divine will. However, he was caught unprepared and had lost the upper hand. How could the opponent let him go so easily? A green flame suddenly lit up on Wei Zhan's divine will saber, and a sharp pain almost drilled into Wei Zhan's brain. It's the green soul fire. I was too careless. Fortunately, although Wei Zhan's attack had caused Lu Ping's flight to slow down, Hu Yang, the master of the Yin and Yang Tower, had already charged at him. The pair of Yin and Yang flying swords in his hands hovered on both sides, covering each other up. It was an extremely wonderful divine will swordsmanship. However, the same two sword lights also hovered and turned into countless sword lights that intertwined in all directions. The Yin and Yang sword formation of the master of the Yin and Yang Tower was instantly broken. Lu Tianping of the North Sea, how could it be you? Chapter 12:10. The master of the Yin and Yang Tower was a genuine sword practitioner, and this set of Yin and Yang sword was also a rare divine swordsmanship inheritance in the cultivation world. However, it was instantly broken by the person in front of him. How could Hu Yang, the master of the Yin and Yang Tower, not be shocked? However, what really shocked him was not the divine swordsmanship of the person in front of him, but the pair of flying sword spiritual treasures. As Lu Ping continued to defeat powerful enemies in the Central Plains, his reputation as the North Sea Water Sword Immortal was now on par with the heirs of the sacred grounds. His pair of flying swords that flowed like a thin stream also became famous, and many sword cultivators knew about them. When Lu Ping revealed his pair of flying swords and broke Hu Yang's Yin and Yang sword, the master of the Yin and Yang Tower knew that the person in front of him was actually Lu Tianping. However, why was he in Joshuan Mountain at this time? Wasn't he forced out by their joint efforts? Then who was the person who entered the thieving heaven's inheritance? As Hu Yang pondered, Lu Ping had completely broken away from his control. With a flash of convents light, Lu Ping left Hu Yang behind again. However, at this time, Chang Sansai had already arrived. We meet again. It was rare for Chang Sansai to be serious. The pair of symbols in his hands flew out and chopped toward Lu Ping one after the other. Then, a sneer flashed across his face. Let's see where you can escape this time. However, the sneer froze on his face before it dissipated. His pair of symbols spun and chopped, but what they hit was a splash. Oh no, I've been tricked. Chang Sansai wanted to retreat quickly. At the same time, the symbols spinning around him suddenly grew bigger and protected him tightly. He was on full alert, ready to receive Lu Ping's thunderous blow. However, what Chang Sansai heard was the rumbling roar of galloping horses that seemed to come from the horizon. When he looked up, he saw a vast ocean descending from the sky. That ocean was basically a river of swords. This kind of surging momentum seemed to be able to completely shatter all obstacles. Without waiting for Chang Sansai to cry out in alarm, the river of swords did not break the pair of copper symbols protecting Chang Sansai. Instead, it wrapped around Chang Sansai, who looked like he was carrying a copper turtle shell on his back, and rolled him 3 miles away. Only then did the river of swords gradually disappear. What kind of divine ability was this? How come no one had ever mentioned it before? For a cultivator like Lu Tianping, the divine arts he usually used in fights of magical powers would naturally be specially collected by people who paid attention to him. After that, they would be obtained by many people who paid attention to him. Naturally, this included the direct lineage cultivators of the 5 great sacred lands of Middle-earth. This could also show how much importance they attached to Lu Tianping. However, the great divine ability that Lu Tianping suddenly performed now had great prowess, giving off an unstoppable aura. Chang Sansai was protected by the pair of copper symbols, and Lu Ping did not seem to have any intention of harming him. This sword river of raging waves was enough to completely tear Chang Sansai into pieces. What a brilliant sword art divine ability! A thought suddenly flashed through Chang Sansai's mind. He seemed to have seen this sword art divine ability before. It was in the forest by the Qingming River. It was just that back then, Lu Ping did not use sword kinesis. Instead, he used spiritual qi to form waves, testing each other out. At that time, the celestial river of spiritual qi did not have such prowess and did not have the embryonic form of a great divine ability. At most, it was just a minor divine ability. It was only when Lu Ping performed it that its prowess became much greater. And what Chang Sansai had faced earlier was an authentic great sword art divine ability. This person was actually creating his own great sword art divine ability, and by the looks of it, he had already succeeded. This thought flashed through Chang Sansai's mind for no reason. Then, this thought brewed in his mind more and more intensely. He did not notice that because he was repelled, there was a gap in the encirclement that surrounded Lu Tianping. Just when Lu Ping used his divine sense divine ability to make Wei Yizhen suffer a loss, and then used his sword art divine ability to repel Hu Yang and Chang Sansai, the encirclement that the 3 heirs of the 9 mystical tower had encircled Lu Ping was broken. However, at this moment, a faint protective array formation gradually formed around Lu Ping. The 5-element pavilion master slowly heaved a sigh of relief. He thought to himself, even if this hastily formed array formation cannot stop you, it only needs to delay your speed for a moment. Once Big Senior Brother and the others surround you again, you will definitely lose this battle. Although Lu Ping had the upper hand against the 3 heirs of the 9 mystical pavilion, the 5 elements pavilion master could already tell that Lu Tianping was no match for the 3 of them. Wei Yizhen and the others never expected that the one who escaped from the 9 mystical mountain would be Lu Tianping. The 5 elements pavilion master didn't expect Lu Tianping to be the one who escaped from the 9 mystical mountain. Just as the 5-element pavilion master finished setting up the array formation, he saw that Lu Ping had already forced Chang Sansai to retreat and was rushing towards him. The 5-element pavilion master laughed in his heart because he could already see that Wei Yizhen and the others had already surrounded Lu Ping. Even if Lu Tianping could break the array formation, so what? Bao Wuxing was the 5th heir of the 9 mystical tower. He did not rely solely on his attainments in array formations to secure his position as the 5th heir of the 9 mystical tower. However, Bao Wuxing's expression changed immediately. A four-colored light suddenly appeared on Lu Ping's body, and Lu Ping crashed directly into the array formation that Bao Wuxing had set up. Four-colored restriction breaking talisman. Amidst Bao Wuxing's exclamation, the protective shield of the array formation was torn apart like a thin piece of paper. Bao Wuxing, who had rushed up in a hurry, was unable to contend with the oncoming Lu Ping due to his lack of preparation. He was pushed back dozens of feet by Lu Ping's sword, making way for Lu Ping to escape. At this moment, the 2 Elements Pavilion Master and the 3 Elements Pavilion Master did not expect that Lu Ping would be able to break the array formation that the 5-Element Pavilion Master had set up so easily. The 2 of them had not yet recovered from the previous 2 sword attacks from Lu Ping. They could only watch helplessly as Lu Ping broke through their encirclement and swaggered away. Lu Tianping, eat my attack. It was Wei Yizhen, the first heir of the 9 Mysteries Pavilion, who had a well-deserved reputation. Although he had suffered a loss in the Divine Thoughts attack, he was the first to be pushed back by Lu Ping. Now, he was the first to recover and closely followed behind Lu Ping. However, if Lu Ping insisted on escaping, there was nothing he could do. He could only attack with all his strength in an attempt to injure Lu Ping. Wei Yizhen was holding a black stone ball in his hand. He suddenly threw it up, and the black stone ball suddenly expanded in midair. Like a falling meteor, it smashed towards Lu Ping's head. In an instant, Lu Ping's figure was shrouded by the shadow of the huge stone. Lu Ping had already sensed that although the shadow could not confine Lu Ping's figure, it seemed to be guiding the huge stone in midair to smash towards Lu Ping. This black stone ball was actually a spiritual treasure, a second tribulation spiritual treasure. Lu Ping abruptly turned around in midair, but his body was still flying backward. The thin water flow sword swirled in the air and spiraled around each other. A monstrous sword wave swept up from the bottom to the top, sweeping towards the falling Hei Shimaru. Great River flows east sword technique. This time, he did not use the sword technique that Lu Ping had created himself. Instead, he used the fundamental great technique of the Sea of 100 Rivers sword technique, which was the great sword technique that Lu Ping had learned from the North Sea wave listening technique. A monstrous wave rose into the sky, causing the huge black stone to sway in midair. However, it could not stop the huge stone from falling. However, Lu Ping did not expect to be able to stop the falling stone. All he needed was a split second of shaking from the huge stone. Lu Ping used his space magic and took advantage of the moment when the huge stone was shaken by Lu Ping. He took a step forward and immediately broke free from the shadow cast on Lu Ping's body by the huge stone. The huge black stone fell with a loud bang. The entire Nineshen Mountain could feel a huge tremor. A huge crater appeared in the middle of Nineshen Mountain. Water flowed out of the crater and swirled up muddy sand. Lu Ping spat out a mouthful of blood. However, his figure took advantage of the huge force brought by the huge stone to fly backwards at a much faster speed. In one fell swoop, he increased the distance between him and the 4 Nineshen Tower heirs. A moment later, he disappeared into the horizon. North Sea Lu Tianping really lives up to his reputation. Wei Yizhen knew that it was too late to chase after him. He simply floated in midair and did not move. Instead, he stretched out his hand towards the crater created by the huge stone. A black stone ball the size of a thumb flew out of the muddy water and landed in Wei Yizhen's hand. At this time, the other 3 also caught up to Wei Yizhen. Chang Sansai looked in the direction that Lu Ping had left and asked, "Boss Wei, are we still going to give chase?" Wei Yizhen glanced at him and said, "Chase? Can you catch up?" The 5 Elements Pavilion Master sighed and said, "How embarrassing. The 4 of us joined forces and still let him escape." However, the 2 Elements Pavilion Master said, "You can't say that. Who knew that this person would actually hide in Nineshen Mountain? We were caught off guard and let him escape. Moreover, this person was already seriously injured by Boss Wei. This time, we did not lose." Chang Sansai said with disdain, 4 against 1, and you still let him escape. You didn't lose the formation, but you lost the people. The 2 Elements Pavilion Master's face turned red and was about to say something. However, the 5 Elements Pavilion Master said, "Strange, how did this Lu Tianping hide in Nineshen Mountain?" We had already chased him away that day, so why did he suddenly jump out? How did he avoid my formation detection and our sect's cultivators searching Nineshen Mountain? At this time, Wei Yizhen suddenly said, "What else could it be? He must have already entered the thieving heavens treasure trove." Wei Yizhen's words caused Chang Sansai and the others to be in disbelief. One after another, they said, "That's impossible. When the treasure trove opened, this Lu Tianping was chased away by us. He didn't even enter Nineshen Mountain, so how could he open the treasure trove? Moreover, if that Lu Tianping really came out of the treasure trove, how could he not hear the loud sound of the treasure trove opening when he came out?" Chapter 12:11. Wei Yizhen didn't pay attention to everyone's nonsense and directly said, "Inform our sect's array masters, mine prospectors, and the like. They must find the heavenly abode within half a month. I want to see what's inside." However, this first Origin Tower Master was destined to be disappointed. With the help of spirit-seeking Mouse Dabao, Lu Ping had already looted most of the treasures in the treasure. Even if they found it, they would not be able to obtain anything. However, the stone wall leading to the Longevity Cave and the Spirit Stone Mine at the entrance of the tunnel might be discovered by them. However, these things originally belonged to the Nine Mystical Tower. The only worry was that the Nine Mystical Mountain would become desperate and chase after Lu Ping and the others. Fortunately, these two spatial passages were well hidden. Hopefully, even if the Nine Mystical Towers cultivators found the treasure, they would not discover the two spatial passages leading to the Nine Mystical Towers protective array. Of course, the first Origin Tower Master was more concerned about how Lu Tianping entered the thieving heaven treasure. However, he knew that since Lu Tianping was able to break out of the Nine Mystical Mountains encirclement, even if they found the thieving heaven treasure, Lu Tianping would not leave any traces of him entering the thieving heaven treasure for the Nine Mystical Towers people to investigate. Moreover, the Nine Mystical Tower would not even think of the Hollow Spirit. At this time, the Five Elements Tower Master said, "Lu Tianping has been seriously injured by eldest senior brother's black ink bead. Even if we cannot catch up to him, he will not be too far away. Moreover, he will definitely find a place to heal his injuries. I think we should instruct our sect's cultivators to search everywhere. Once we find him within our sect's sphere of influence, we can immediately surround and annihilate him." Chang Sansai was silent, but the Two Elements Tower Master clapped his hands and laughed, "Old Five, this is a good idea." However, this Lu Tianping was able to block eldest Wei's black ink bead and escape. Although this ability is amazing, I am afraid that his injuries are now like an arrow at the end of its flight. Wei Yizhen hesitated for a moment before nodding. Just as he was about to open his mouth to agree, a sharp sound pierced through the air and rang in everyone's ears. Wei Yizhen was not the only one. Even the other three cultivators wore solemn expressions. When they turned to the northeast, they saw streaks of light of various colors rising into the sky, transforming into colorful clouds that formed a huge Shen character in the sky that could be seen by all cultivators within a radius of 1,000 kilometers. Wei Yizhen's face sank. Sect leader Shen Yun is giving us a warning. We need to return quickly. The Yin-Yang building master asked curiously, "Who has eaten the guts of a leopard, daring to provoke our building?" Wei Yizhen barked, "Shut up and return." Lu Ping had used Wei Yizhen's attack to speed up his retreat, but he did not expect that the power contained in that attack would be so powerful. Although Lu Ping also had a second tribulation spirit treasure, the two broken mantis scissors, if the two spirit treasures were to clash head-on, the two broken mantis scissors would definitely lose. Although Lu Ping had managed to escape the attack of Wei Yizhen's spirit treasure, he was still injured by the aura contained in the spirit treasure. His internal organs were injured, and he could no longer suppress the mouthful of blood in his chest. Fortunately, Lu Ping's body was strong. After consuming the 7-aperture pill in the Thieving Heaven's inheritance, his body's cultivation had risen to another level. Although this attack had injured Lu Ping's internal organs, his injuries were not as serious as the Five Elements Tower Master and the others had expected. Lu Ping flew all the way out of the Nine Profound Mountain, and the Nine Profound Tower's direct disciples behind him could no longer catch up. Lu Ping then turned northwest, preparing to return to the North Sea through the Ying Tian courtyard. However, Just as Lu Ping reached the shore of the Qingming River, the scene in front of Lu Ping made him tremble with fear. Countless devil asuras plunged into the water from the other side of the Qingming River like dumplings being dropped into a pot. Deep gullies were left on the ground. Countless wind asuras were peeking out from the 3 tornadoes. The forest by the shore was ablaze. However, the forest was still green. The blazing fire did not destroy much of the forest. At this time, a thin layer of ice gradually formed on the surface of the Qingming River. This layer of ice also extended all the way to the other side of the river, as if a bridge had been built on the surface of the Qingming River. The countless Mara soldiers who had been waiting by the shore all stepped on the ice and headed to the other side. Big and small Mara were everywhere, and blood Mara could be seen everywhere. Traces of jade Mara had also been detected by Lu Ping, and even the aura of asuras had been detected by Lu Ping twice in a short period of time. What were they trying to do? After all, this place was still within the 9 Profound Towers' sphere of influence. How could the 9 Profound Tower ignore Mara's massive invasion? However, what if Mara's army was originally aiming for the 9 Profound Tower? Run. He absolutely could not let Mara's army entangle him. With such an overwhelming scene, if he really fell into Mara's heavy encirclement, Lu Ping would not even be able to cause a splash before he was swallowed up by Mara's army. Lu Ping did not dare to flee south. At this time, Mara's army was also heading south, and it seemed like their destination was very clear. If he continued to head south, he might attract the attention of some powerful existence in Mara's army. If he was killed, there would be no way for him to explain himself. Lu Ping could only head west in an attempt to shake off the pursuit of Mara's army. He hoped that this time, Mara's army had gathered here with a purpose. If that was the case, there was a chance that he would not attract the attention of Jade Mara, who was at the same level as him, or even someone with a higher cultivation. Lu Ping followed the Qingming River for a few dozen kilometers in a single breath. The number of Mara's army on the river's surface gradually decreased, but Lu Ping did not relax at all. Instead, his expression became more and more solemn. At this time, within the range of Lu Ping's divine sense, he could clearly sense that about 30 to 40 kilometers south of the Qingming River, a large number of Mara's auras had appeared. Moreover, there was no lack of existences of the same level as Mara. Furthermore, further away, the auras of Mara's divine sense were even more rampant and tyrannical. However, there was a limit to the range of Lu Ping's divine sense. Even if he could sense it further away, it was still extremely vague. The northern Mara's army had crossed the river in large numbers, while the western Mara's army was heading east in large numbers. The intention of the Mara's army was already very clear. They were heading towards the 9 Profound Tower. Furthermore, if Lu Ping was not wrong, there were currently 2 groups of Mara's armies, one from the east and one from the south, working together with the other 2 groups to surround the 9 Profound Tower. This Mara's army was really going all out. Lu Ping's luck was evidently pretty good. Currently, he had been fleeing in the northwest direction for his life. Instead, he had fled all the way to the point where the northern Mara's army and the western Mara's army met. Without a doubt, this was because the 2 groups of Mara's army had suffered too much damage. Charge out, I must charge out. As the 4 sides of the Mara's army closed in, this area would gradually shrink and disappear. When that happened, Lu Ping would probably be trapped. Lu Ping had no time to worry about his internal injuries. The thin stream sword was like 2 green dragons that dove into the Qingming River. It alerted the Mara's army that was patrolling the river, and 2 Jade Shura came for Lu Ping. At this time, the Qingming River that Lu Ping was in was already upstream, and the river was getting more and more turbulent. But at this time, the entire Qingming River suddenly started to boil. As the 2 Jade Shura came for him in fear, the Qingming River under their feet suddenly rose by 3 feet. The entire Qingming River started to flow backward. The Qingming River that the 2 sides of the Mara's army were combining to strengthen the 2 sides of the Mara's army. They did not expect Lu Ping to be able to use his own power to move the entire Qingming River. They were all shocked, and they all fell back. The entire formation of the Mara's army was suddenly thrown into chaos. At this time, 2 green sword dragons emerged from the river, carrying the power of the Qingming River flowing backwards. They were coming for the 2 jade Shura that were trying to kill Lu Ping. Before the 2 sword dragons even got close, their fierce power was already coming for the 2 jade Shura. The 2 jade Shura were scared before they could even fight. But how could Lu Ping's trump card be so simple? A giant praying mantis suddenly appeared above Lu Ping's head. Its 2 blades crisscrossed and slashed down like a pair of scissors. The 2 blades had already broken through the restrictions of space and were aimed at the 2 jade Shuras. At the same time, the water ghost sword flashed a blue light in the air, and it appeared in the midst of the Mara's army, which had been thrown into chaos by Lu Ping. Every time the blue light flashed, a Mara would die. A rat jumped onto Lu Ping's left shoulder, its long tail coiled around a small copper hammer and swung it upwards. The copper bell that appeared above his head suddenly rang loudly, and the already disorderly battle formation was now in chaos. A few blood Mara wanted to come out and clean up the Mara army, but a loud voice shouted, "Kill them." Lu Xiaoping took the lead. After Lu Ping had reached the mid-Dharma level, Lu Xiaoping's power had increased a lot, even though his training had not increased. At least this sudden attack was enough to put a few blood Mara in a difficult position. A jade demon had appeared behind the Mara army, and it suddenly spat in Lu Ping's direction. Lu Ping suddenly felt as if his will had been pierced by something like a nail. Lu Ping didn't mind it at all. His jade phosphorus soul fire flickered and the soul-devouring nail was instantly refined. The jade demon screamed in pain and saw a golden peng swooping down from the sky, its claws reaching for the jade demon's head. The jade demon hurriedly retreated and saw the golden peng suddenly explode in mid-air. It turned into a sky full of auspicious clouds that shrouded the entire sky. The jade demon wanted to use its divine art to counterattack, but it was suddenly blocked by the auspicious clouds in the sky. Its soul-devouring divine art was weakened by half every time it used it. Chapter 12:12. Mara's army was going to surround the 9 profound tower. Lu Ping had no time to be shocked. He had to escape from the encirclement first. The cloud sail had weakened the jade demon's harassment and sneak attacks. Samling, Lu Qina, Lu Xiaohai, and the others no longer had any scruples. They joined forces and attacked. The surface of the Qingming River had already been turned upside down by the 2 sword dragons formed by Lu Ping's thin water flow sword. The 3 jade Mara were also being pinned down by Lu Ping. Lu Ping saw that the time was ripe. He had single-handedly thrown the Mara's army that was gathering on the Qingming River into chaos. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Lu Ping laughed bitterly to himself. No matter how vigorous his true essence was, he wouldn't be able to sustain such an intense consumption of true essence when he was seriously injured. This time, his injuries were even more serious. But if he couldn't break out of the encirclement now, once the Mara's army came from 2 directions to reinforce him, not only would Lu Ping have no chance to escape, but he would also die. Lu Ping held his hands in the air and an extremely dense purplish-blue light began to condense. 12 5-colored stars flashed in the middle of the purplish-blue light. Then, Lu Ping abruptly pressed the light down into the river beneath his feet. 12 5-colored pillars of light shot into the sky from the Qingming River, and 12 huge waves rolled up from different directions. Everything within a mile of Lu Ping was covered in water, and it was impossible to tell north from south. Countless Mara were suppressed and swallowed in this world of water. At the same time, under the cover of the huge waves, a blooming white jade lotus gradually appeared in the river and began to close up. The huge flower also began to gradually shrink until it disappeared. Just as the white jade lotus disappeared into the Qingming River, the 12 beams of colorful light that shot into the sky suddenly disappeared. The various spiritual treasures and the numerous cultivators who had been wreaking havoc in the group of Mo Luo also disappeared abruptly. The boiling river gradually calmed down, but the surviving Mo Luo still had not recovered from the earth-shattering scene. 3 jade Mara gathered together in a sorry state. While guarding against Lu Ping, who was hiding somewhere, they began to regroup the defeated Mara's army. At this moment, several beams of light came from the north and west. Several jade Mara and blood Mara came as reinforcements. There was even an Azura among the Mara that came from the north, which made all the Mara present worship. Looking at the doomsday-like scene, the Asura's furious roar made all the Mara present fall silent. They just knelt on the ground, not daring to make the slightest movement. As the Asura continued to roar, groups of Mara immediately moved. In the Qingming River, in the mountains on both sides, in the woods, and even further places, they began to search for traces of Lu Ping. The Asura also followed the groups of Mara from time to time, trying to find Lu Ping, who had just disappeared. However, no matter how hard these Mara searched, they never found any trace of Lu Ping. In such a short time, where did Lu Ping hide? At this moment, Lu Ping was hiding in the water vein of the Qingming River. Even he himself didn't know that he could break through the water vein of the Qingming River and hide in it. Just as Lu Ping used the natal Zhenchen formation to activate this section of the Qingming River, there was a moment when Lu Ping actually discovered that as the Qingming River moved, the water vein hidden at the bottom of the Qingming River was also affected. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. The White Lotus formation caught the movement of the water vein and opened the spatial entrance to the water vein of the Qingming River. Lu Ping was overjoyed. Taking advantage of the chaos caused by the Zhenchen formation, he instantly recalled Samling and the others. Without waiting for the Qingming River to calm down, Lu Ping and the others had already entered the water vein through the White Jade Lotus. However, Lu Ping still didn't dare to be careless. He activated the art of sea deception and worked hard to become one with the water vein. Indeed, moments later, the chaos caused by Lu Ping was discovered by Mara's armies in the north and west. When reinforcements arrived, an Asura followed. Everyone knew that the water vein was hidden in the Qingming River, but it was extremely rare to find someone capable of entering the water vein. Even Mara, who was thought to be an essence spirit, might not be able to discover the water vein of the Qingming River. However, the water vein was extremely fragile. If Lu Ping made any strange movements in the water vein, it could destroy the water vein's concealment. Not only could he be discovered by the Asura who was constantly monitoring the Qingming River, he could even cause damage to the water vein of the Qingming River. The two largest rivers in the Central Plains were the Nether River, while the other was the Yulon River. This was something that everyone knew. However, rivers were hard to find, and every single one of them was extremely hard to find. Even if you were able to find it immediately, it could disappear into the river at any time. In the world of cultivation, there were very few people who could capture a water vein and use it. Firstly, water veins were difficult to find. Secondly, it was difficult to keep a water vein under control. As for the two largest water veins, the Qingming River and the Yulon River, they were even more difficult to use. The only way to find these two water veins was by using the Yulon River vein that the Khoi clan and Wuxing school used, and the Qingming River vein that the Nine Mysteries Tower and Skyward Pavilion used. Seeing that countless Mara were searching the Qingming River but were unable to find Lu Ping hiding in the water vein, the Asura grew impatient. With a whistle, the numerous Mara began to regroup and head towards the Nine Mysteries Tower. Compared to the great battle they were about to face, this lucky fellow who had escaped their search was nothing. Even though Mara had left, Lu Ping, who was hiding in the water vein, was not in a hurry to come out. This was because no matter which river it would always be erratic. It was not easy to find it. Moreover, Lu Ping specialized in water attribute techniques. A water vein was the condensation of the essence of a river. To Lu Ping, any water vein was a great opportunity for him to train. The effect was no less than Lu Ping discovering a large spirit vein and enjoying the benefits of it. What's more, this was the largest water vein in the Central Plains, the Qingming River. Moreover, when Lu Ping had used the art of sea deception to merge with the water vein, he had already discovered that his injuries were healing quickly under the nourishment of the Qingming River's water vein. Originally, the injuries Lu Ping had suffered from this technique would require at least 2 to 3 years of recuperation. Now, it seemed that he would only need a year at most to completely recover from his injuries. Moreover, he was fortunate enough to be able to control the Qingming River's water vein and make use of it. No matter what, Lu Ping would not let go of this opportunity. The water vein of the Qingming River was extremely difficult to control. It was easy for Lu Ping to enter the water vein for a while, but as time passed, he would discover that the water vein was flowing away. Moreover, it was extremely difficult to find out where the flowing water vein was going. Fortunately, Lu Ping's attainments in the Tao of water were quite profound. The art of sea deception was also an extremely exquisite inheritance. After Lu Ping worked hard to merge with the water vein, he was finally able to control the Qingming River's water vein well. He had never missed the opportunity to control the Qingming River's water vein. Circulating the North Sea wave listening technique, the water essence of the Qingming River continuously surged into Lu Ping's body, healing Lu Ping's injuries and increasing his cultivation at the same time. Just as Lu Ping was hiding in the Qingming River's water vein and cultivating, the Nine Mystical Tower was facing its biggest crisis since it had established itself as one of the 5 sacred lands. Hundreds of thousands of Mara, led by nearly 30 Asuras and 5 heavenly demons, surrounded the Nine Mystical Tower from all directions. At the same time, an endless stream of Mara's army appeared from all directions and gathered towards the Nine Mystical Tower. The number of Mara's army attacking the Nine Mystical Tower continued to grow, and for a time, the world was shaken. The other 4 sacred lands of the Middle Plains sent out orders to the cultivation world to reinforce the Nine Mystical Tower, calling for the entire cultivation world to head to the Nine Mystical Tower to kill Mara. This attracted the response of many sects and powers in the Middle Plains. However, just as the cultivators from the various sects began to gather and head towards the Nine Mystical Tower's territory, they encountered layers upon layers of resistance from Mara's army. Countless Mara fearlessly attacked the cultivators from the various sects and powers who came to reinforce the Nine Mystical Tower, blocking the reinforcements outside the Nine Mystical Tower. Mara's large-scale attack on the Nine Mystical Tower signified that Mara's calamity had begun again and had reached its climax. Fending off Mara's calamity was a righteous cause for the cultivation world. That was why the entire cultivation world responded to the request to reinforce the Nine Mystical Tower. Of course, the various factions that had rushed over to reinforce the Nine Profound Tower naturally had their own selfish motives. They naturally wouldn't do something that would cause them to lose 800 men in order to save the Nine Profound Tower. After all, the Nine Profound Tower wasn't their biological father. There was no need for them to risk their lives like that. What's more, while the other 4 holy lands of the Central Region were calling for the entire cultivation world of the Central Region to rescue the Nine Profound Tower, the Lingyun Valley and the Skyward Pavilion were confronting the demon clan of the Endless Mountain because of the Magic Cloud City. The Wuxing School was focusing on the chaotic situation in the northern cultivation world and the 2 large sects on the eastern coast. At the same time, they were also vigilant of the Crystal Palace's infiltration from the East Sea to the Central Region. As for the Purple Sun Palace, it seemed that the situation was not very good. The situation in the Western Wilderness had changed because of the rise of the Pegasus clan, and the sphere of influence of the Purple Sun Palace seemed to be affected. Although the other 4 holy lands had also sent reinforcements to the Nine Mystical Tower, they were all preoccupied with other matters. Thus, the amount of reinforcements they could send was not that great. Thus, the Nine Mystical Tower was constantly besieged by Mara's army. Even the other 4 holy lands were incapable of sending reinforcements to the Nine Mystical Tower. Naturally, even though the other sects and sects had sent reinforcements, they would not go all out to fight Mara. Chapter 12-13. Lu Ping had been practicing in the water vein of Qingming River for more than a year, and the injuries on his body had already recovered. However, to be able to obtain the nourishment of a water vein was an extremely rare thing. Lu Ping naturally did not want to lose such a hard-won opportunity so easily, so he put all his attention into practicing. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, an explosive sound came from the middle of the Qingming River, which had already regained its tranquility. Surging waves rose up from the bottom of the Qingming River, bringing along a cloud of dense spiritual energy. The clouds and water vapor in the surroundings quickly gathered together, forming a white mist in the sky above the Qingming River. A roar came from within the mist, and a strange blue flood dragon with the body of a snake, the legs of a crocodile, and the tail of a carp sprang out from the mist. It swaggered in the air, showing off its might. The strange dragon seemed very excited in the air, and the white mist spontaneously gathered around its body. Its slender body brought along the surging white mist in the air, and when it circled in the air, it would cause vibrations like water waves. From a distance, the strange dragon seemed to be directing the white mist to imitate the scene of the waves of the Qingming River under its feet. Okay, isn't it just condensing the Dharma idol one step ahead of us? Look at your proud look. A crisp voice sounded, and the tone was full of jealousy. Who else could it be but Lu Linga? Hee. The strange Jiao turned half a circle in the air, then disappeared into the white mist. After rolling for a while, Lu Hai walked out from inside, and laughed complacently. Third sister, you can be jealous. Just the tone of your voice. Your brother, am so jealous that my teeth are going to fall off. Ayaya, I am so angry. Look at my move, icebound 1,000 miles. A white figure suddenly appeared from the Qingming River. It was a huge white snake stirring up a big wave in the river. Before the wave fell, it turned into an ice snake in the air that was similar to the white snake, and pounced towards Lu Hai. However, Lu Hai seemed to be dismissive of Lu Linga's little tricks and said, Hey, it's useless. In front of the absolute strength of my Dharma plane cultivation, your little tricks are useless. You will only be crushed. Lu Hai pointed at the ice snake that was rushing over, and with a series of splashing sounds, the ice snake had already turned into a pool of water and fell into the Qingming River. Seeing that her sacred art had been broken so easily, Lu Linga was extremely unhappy. She shouted towards the river below her, Big sister, Lu Hai is bullying me. Lu Hai stared at him and said, Can you call me second brother? Lu Linga made a face, and heard Lu Bai's gentle voice coming from the river. She sighed slightly, I can't help you. Both of us have not entered the Dharma plane yet. Even if we join forces, we are not this guy's opponent. If we have the time to be angry, we might as well hurry up and cultivate. When we also condense the Dharma plane, will he still dare to show off in front of us? Lu Linga was very discouraged, and complained, Father has not come out for so many years in the water vein. If Father comes out, let's see if he still dares to be so presumptuous. This guy is also lucky. He has been cultivating with Father in the water vein for 5 years. I didn't expect that he would be the first to break through the Dharma plane, Lu Hai said proudly. Hey, that is the water vein. Father himself also cultivates the water attribute cultivation method. I, your second brother, am just lucky. Do you understand? Who told you to cultivate the wind and ice? Such a good water vein can't be used. Who can you blame? Lu Hai's pride made Lu Linga more and more angry, but her cultivation was firmly suppressed by Lu Hai at this time, and there was nothing she could do. Among the Samling, Lu Bai was diligent and steady in cultivation, and was the most trusted by Lu Ping. Lu Ping himself was a water cultivator, so he received the most care and guidance, and Lu Linga was cute, and was the most loved by Lu Ping. Generally, she was the one who got the most good things, especially when Lu Ping also found the inheritance of the Ice Dragon clan for her, which made her cultivation greatly improved. Originally, Lu Linga thought that she would be the first to enter the Dharma plane, but she did not expect that Lu Hai would be the first to do so. Naturally, she was very unhappy in her heart, and her sarcasm failed. But Lu Hai himself, because after condensing the Dharma plane, his position was still different. Naturally, he would not take Lu Linga's childish words to heart, which made Lu Linga very angry. Lu Linga turned around and asked, Big sister, how long will it take for you to enter the Dharma plane? Lu Bai sighed and said, We're just left with this last step. Linga, among the 3 of us, you're the one who has improved the fastest, and your potential is also the best. If you weren't as playful as Da Bao, you would have entered the Dharma stage long ago. Why would you still need to watch your second brother strut around now? Lu Linga whispered angrily, That's because I wanted to wait for you too. Who knew that your cultivation was actually ahead of me, and you didn't even tell me? Lu Hai said, Don't look for those reasons, but this time, it is not me who has benefited the most from following Father, but Dagui. Lu Linga remembered that after entering the water vein, Lu Ping released them. Although Lu Bai and Lu Linga were demon cultivators who liked water, their cultivation method was not compatible with the water vein, and it did not take long for them to be expelled by the water vein. Lu Ping practiced in it for 5 years and broke through to the Dharma plane. When he broke through, it caused a lot of celestial phenomena, and Lu Ping had no time to cover it, so he was expelled by the water vein. Only Lu Dague, the black tortoise, had been following Lu Ping to practice. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. Although Dague is usually honest, his luck is always so good. Now his cultivation has probably advanced to the late core forging realm, right? Lu Bai said softly, practicing the water attribute martial arts, following by father's side will always be the most beneficial. Brother Dague usually works hard without any complaints, always giving way to us when there's a problem, so it's only right that he gets some benefits. Moreover, no matter how much benefits brother Dague gets, can it compare to second brother condensing a form? Lu Linga was still indignant. She was not jealous, but she was the last one among the 3 siblings. She was unhappy, so naturally, she said everything without thinking. Lu Bai knew her temperament, so she continued, compared to sister Qin we are considered lucky. Lu Qin aptitude and cultivation base weren't any weaker than the 3 of them, but unfortunately, she couldn't find a windfire dual elemental heaven spirit. Lu Qin was also a proud and arrogant person, so she wasn't willing to condense a high-grade golden core with just a windfire or wind elemental heaven spirit. Hence, her cultivation base had been stuck at the bottleneck of the 9th layer core forging realm. And now, Lu Ping had given her a mission to hatch the 5 wood luan eggs in the golden house. Sure enough, upon hearing Lu Bai's words, Lu Linga's unhappy expression immediately recovered, and she said excitedly, I don't know what level father's cultivation has reached now. Will he attract the second thunder tribulation and enter the late Dharma stage in one fell swoop? Lu Bai did not say anything, but Lu Hai thought for a moment and said, no, with father's strength, even if he attracts the second thunder tribulation, it may not be able to do anything to him. However, father has always been cautious. If not for the fact that he has accumulated his strength to the limit when he was in the middle Dharma stage, he would not have summoned the second thunder tribulation. Lu Hai had now entered the Dharma stage, so he understood Lu Ping better than Lu Bai and Lu Linga. Moreover, Lu Hai had followed Lu Ping to train in the water vein for 5 years, so he could be said to be the most familiar with Lu Ping's recent situation. Lu Bai nodded and said, father's strength has always been the best of the practitioners of the same level. Moreover, father's vision will not be limited to the late Dharma stage. Even pure young Laozu may not be in father's eyes. His goal is higher, and he will not easily summon the thunder tribulation to increase his cultivation. At this time, Lu Linga rolled her eyes at the side and said, big sister, second brother, why don't we go somewhere else to play? It's boring to stay here all the time. Lu Bai hurriedly interrupted, don't even think about it, we still have to wait here for father to come out of seclusion. Moreover, we are now in the central region, this is the world of the human practitioners, and it is the time of Mara's calamity. What if we are discovered? Lu Linga said, oh, big sister, do you still think we are children under father's protection? With the cultivation of the 3 of us, how many people in the world of cultivation can do anything to us? And with the identity of the 3 of us, who would dare to provoke us? Moreover, second brother has now broken through the Dharma stage. In the world of cultivation, he is more or less a small master. We can't always live under father's wings, can we? Lu Bai did not say anything. Lu Linga turned around and said, second brother is the most powerful. Let's go out and play. It is boring to stay here all the time. Lu Hai laughed and said, I will listen to big sister. However, there was still a look of eagerness in Lu Hai's eyes. Lu Linga rolled her eyes and said simply, you are a Dharma adept, so timid. If you two don't go, then I will go play alone. Don't worry, I won't go far. After saying that, Lu Linga rolled in the water, and she was already a few miles away. Lu Bai had to interrupt her cultivation and float up from the river, and then she and Lu Hai chased after her. Outside the book, Lu Linga smiled at the 2 people who had caught up and said, I know you two also want to go out and play, but no one dares to disobey father's words. Lu Hai smiled foolishly and said nothing. He was originally the most straightforward person, but after his advancement, he was also quite ambitious. Compared to Lu Linga, who could not bear the loneliness and wanted to play, rather than saying that he was tired of waiting, it would be better to say that he wanted to find someone to fight with and see what level his cultivation had reached. Only Lu Bai was the most steady. Seeing that she could not persuade the two people, she finally said helplessly, "Don't go far, father may come out at any time." In the Qingming River's water vein, Lu Ping, who had been in closed-door cultivation for 10 years, suddenly opened his eyes. A hint of surprise could be seen in his eyes as he said, "What a strong water vein. What's going on? Could it be that someone is after the Qingming River's water vein?" Chapter 12:14. There were usually only two situations in which a water vein fluctuated violently. One was when the river changed its course, and the other was when the river burst its banks and flooded. Usually, only these two situations would cause the water vein of a river to fluctuate violently. However, there were many people with remarkable abilities in the world of cultivation. There were naturally many methods to cause a water vein to fluctuate so violently. However, there were only these two methods that could be used to achieve such a result. However, this situation was usually when the cultivator was unable to find the water vein. If they could find the water vein of the Qingming River, and if there were a few cultivators with remarkable abilities, they would not need to change the course of the Qingming River and burst its banks to achieve the same goal. Of course, it was not an easy task to shake the water vein of a large river like the Qingming River. For someone like Lu Ping, it was not easy to even find the water vein of the Qingming River, much less shake the water vein of the largest river in the Central Plains. There were only two great sects that could make the water vein of the Qingming River work without damaging its foundation. One was the Nine Profound Tower, which was located in the middle of the Qingming River, and the other was the Skyward Pavilion, which was near the mouth of the Qingming River. If Lu Ping had not challenged many Mara with his own strength and caused a violent tremor in the Qingming River when he attacked with his full strength, allowing him to luckily capture a trace of the ripples in the Qingming River and enter the water vein, it would have been difficult for Lu Ping to enter the water vein after exiting the water vein, even with Lu Ping's level of cultivation. This was also why Lu Ping did his best to cultivate after entering the water vein. Even when he sensed Samling and the others leaving, he did not stop them. He did not want to destroy the hard-won opportunity to enter the water vein. Of course, Samling's strength was also an important reason why Lu Ping had the confidence to let them travel alone. In reality, in the 10 years since Lu Ping entered the water vein, there had been rhythmic ripples coming from the east side of the water vein. However, these ripples did not affect Lu Ping's normal cultivation. Moreover, Lu Ping also knew that the Nine Profound Tower was currently surrounded by Mara's army thousands of miles to the east of the Qingming River. The Nine Profound Tower was currently in a defensive position, so it was understandable that they would use the power of the Qingming River to strengthen the sect's defensive formation. Moreover, the power of the water vein that the Nine Profound Tower could use was extremely limited, so the ripples were not strong and very orderly. It could be seen that although the Nine Profound Tower had been surrounded by Mara's army for 10 years, the entire Nine Profound Tower was still able to deal with the attacks of Mara's army with ease. However, the ripples in the water vein didn't originate from the Nine Mystical Tower in the east. Instead, it came from the west side of the Qingming River. From the looks of it, the water vein wasn't too far away from Lu Ping's seclusion ground. However, Lu Ping didn't intend to investigate. Lu Ping guessed that there might be some powerful cultivator stirring up the water vein of the Qingming River. He naturally did not want to provoke them, so he did his best to prevent himself from being repelled by the ripples in the water vein. Another year passed, and the ripples in the water vein became more and more frequent. Moreover, the ripples grew larger and larger, to the point where Lu Ping could not guarantee that he would be able to cultivate. If this continued, not only would he not be able to cultivate, but Lu Ping himself would also be thrown out of the water vein. Just who would be so bold? One had to know that although the water vein of the Qingming River was difficult to capture, and even more difficult to enter to cultivate, any cultivator who could enter was undoubtedly a powerful cultivator in the cultivation world. The water vein of the Qingming River had been stirred like this for more than a year. It was definitely man-made, and in the process, it would definitely affect many powerful cultivators who were hidden in the water vein. This action was undoubtedly making an enemy of these powerful cultivators. Relying on the wonders of the North Sea wave listening spell, Lu Ping could still barely maintain his body in the water vein under such violent ripples, but he could no longer enter a meditative state to cultivate. Under such circumstances, there was no point for Lu Ping to stay in the water vein. However, Lu Ping was not a powerful cultivator who could capture the water vein of the Qingming River at any time and enter it. Lu Ping really did not want to lose this opportunity to enter the water vein. Therefore, Lu Ping was not in a hurry to search for the direction of the ripples. Instead, he had been using the water vein to quietly sneak in the direction of the ripples. However, just as Lu Ping was sneaking in the direction of the ripples, no one would have thought that someone would be able to hide in the water vein after such a violent ripple. Therefore, when Lu Ping was about to reach the place where the violent ripples came from, he quickly discovered that this was a trap that had been set long ago, and the person who wanted to ambush him was very likely Lu Ping himself. At this time, Lu Ping also sensed Samling's aura nearby. It was obvious that the three of them had stayed here for a period of time. Moreover, the aura that was erratic, sometimes condensing and sometimes dissipating, made Lu Ping even more certain that Samling had deliberately left it here. This was a unique warning and rescue method of green sea snakes. Lu Ping had asked Samling about the characteristics of this method in detail. He did not expect that it would come in handy today. Lu Ping's heart sank. He thought to himself, "I'm afraid that Samling is already dead. The person lying in ambush here has obviously sensed my presence through Samling. The violent ripples in the water vein earlier were probably to lure me here. Once I follow the traces left by Samling and find this place, I will fall into the ambush." However, they did not expect that Lu Ping had come here by hiding in the water vein. The North Sea wave listening spell could actually allow Lu Ping to hide in the water vein even after such a violent disturbance. He had managed to sneak into the ambush that was originally prepared for Lu Ping. Could it really be that Lu Tianping himself? A cultivator that seemed to be young and didn't seem to be particularly old was hiding beneath the aquatic plants at the bottom of the Azure Netherworld River. When he saw that Lu Tianping still hadn't arrived after such a long time, he couldn't help but feel slightly doubtful. It must be him. Don't forget that those three demon cultivators that senior brother Qin Wuliang captured earlier were all from the Jade Sea Spirit Serpent clan. Currently, in the entire cultivation world, other than that Lu Tianping, who else has a Jade Sea Spirit Serpent as a follower? A voice came from a large fish that was swimming back and forth in the river. It turned out that it was a cultivator who had actually mastered the ability to transform into a fish. It is rumored that Lu Tianping's strength is no weaker than that of a great cultivator. Even the green sea snake was able to accept him as a follower. It might be possible for us to defeat him if we join forces, but I'm afraid it will be beyond our power to trap this person. Don't forget that although only one of the three demon cultivators had just reached the early Dharma stage, it took a lot of effort to capture them. In the end, it was senior brother Qin Wuliang who made a move to capture the three of them. Now, with just the few of us? The cultivator who was hidden under the water reeds asked again, obviously not optimistic about the outcome. It's not just a lot of effort. It's funny that Yang Wuji is at the peak of the early Dharma stage and is ranked 11th among the true disciples of our sect. He vowed that he would capture those three green sea snakes, but he didn't expect to be defeated by the three green sea snakes. Moreover, two of the three green sea snakes are only at the peak of the core forging stage, and the one at the Dharma stage has only just advanced. This Yang Wuji has almost lost all the face of our sect. Another voice joined the discussion. It was obvious that this person rarely spoke, but the blatant sarcasm in his words seemed to indicate that the person who spoke seemed to be on bad terms with the practitioner at the peak of the early Dharma stage, Yang Wuji. However, the fact that this person had taken the initiative to join the discussion made everyone's interest rise a little. However, this person fell silent again, and other than mocking Yang Wuji, he did not speak again. Don't worry, this time it's Sister Shueijiro who is personally involved. She is one of the 5 great Juzi of our sect, and with the help of all of us, how can we not be able to capture Lu Tianping? Not to mention, as long as we can trap him right away, the other cultivators from our sect will immediately rush over. That includes senior brother Qin Wuliang and the others. It is said that senior brother Mu Changsheng is already on his way over. Even our sect's second-generation cultivators, the great-uncle masters, are already prepared to take action. It turned out that it was the practitioners of Wuxing School, and Samling had obviously fallen into the hands of Wuxing School at this time. Lu Ping was secretly shocked, but he could not help but wonder, why is Wuxing School stirring up the water of the Qingming River here? The water of the Qingming River has only become extremely violent recently, but this kind of fluctuation has already lasted for nearly a year. This is obviously not a trap that Wuxing School has specially set up for more than a year to set up for Lu Ping. Why has Wuxing School been continuously stirring up the water of the Qingming River for more than a year? Sister Shui Jiro is personally involved. The few disciples of Wuxing School who participated in the ambush all seemed to be shocked. However, at this time, Lu Ping did not bother to stay here anymore. Instead, he continued to follow the water upstream and continued to search for Samling's aura, hoping to rescue the three of them first. As for the current scheme of Wuxing School, in Lu Ping's opinion, it was best to hide as far away as possible. However, this time, Lu Ping had miscalculated. At this time, he was getting closer and closer to the source of the water fluctuation. Previously, the North Sea Wave listening spell could barely keep him hidden in the water, but now, it could no longer completely hide Lu Ping's aura in the water. Who is it? A clear and ethereal shout rang in Lu Ping's ears. When Lu Ping looked up, he saw that a female practitioner in white had unknowingly appeared in the Qingming River. A pair of beautiful eyes were staring in the direction where Lu Ping was hiding in the water. Suddenly, a pair of bells appeared in her hands. With a crisp ding-dang-dang sound, Lu Ping's expression changed. He felt that his surroundings had loosened, and his whole body almost sank into the water. Lu Ping secretly felt that something was wrong. As he staggered, he had already been pushed out of the water by the sound of the bells. Under the influence of the sound of the bells, he could no longer stand in the water. Chapter 12:15. Wuxing School was divided into 5 branches: Metal Branch, Wood Branch, Water Branch, Fire Branch, and Earth Branch. The first heir of each branch was called Juzi. However, since the branch of Broken Water lost 2 of the meridian-guarding treasures left by one of the founders of Wuxing School, the branch of Broken Water lost something very important. Compared with the other 4 branches, it became weaker and weaker in Wuxing School. Later, although Juzi of the branch of Broken Water was the first heir, in fact, he was slightly inferior to the second and third heir of the other 4 branches. As a result, the disciples of the branch of Broken Water were often ridiculed by the other 4 branches in Wuxing School, and the position of the branch of Broken Water in Wuxing School had been declining. However, the reason why Wuxing School was called Wuxing School was that there were many common connections among the 5 branches, and these connections might even affect the foundation of Wuxing School. Therefore, the decline of the branch of Broken Water could not be simply made up by the other 4 branches becoming stronger. On the contrary, the decline of the branch of Broken Water would become a fatal flaw in the overall improvement of Wuxing School. The 5 branches of Wuxing School were interdependent and promoted each other. They were basically a school that shared prosperity and decline. Although the disciples of the other 4 branches of Wuxing School complained about the current situation of the branch of Broken Water, the high-level practitioners of Wuxing School understood this. Therefore, Wuxing School had never given up supporting the branch of Broken Water, and even tried to make up for the loss of the branch of Broken Water. Otherwise, Wuxing School would have long become the best among the 5 Holy Lands of Middle Land. The 5 Holy Lands of Middle Land and the Crystal Palace of East Sea were actually different among the 6 Holy Lands of the human tribe in the world of cultivation. The Crystal Palace had dominated East Sea for tens of thousands of years. Although East Sea was not as prosperous as Middle Land, it naturally had a unique advantage because of its dominance. Among the 6 Holy Lands, it even had the potential to rank first. This was why the Crystal Palace had always dared to infiltrate Middle Land at the risk of becoming the enemy of the Holy Lands of Middle Land. Among the 5 Holy Lands of Middle Land and the Crystal Palace of East Sea, the only one that could compete with the Crystal Palace was Xiang Palace. Similar to the Crystal Palace, Xiang Palace was close to West Wilderness. Although it was located in the west of the Five Holy Lands and was extremely remote in the world of cultivation in Middle Land, Xiang Palace also occupied a sphere of influence that the other four Holy Lands could not compare with. However, at the same time, the Purple Sun Palace was able to occupy a sphere of influence that the other four sanctums could not compare to, especially in the West Wilderness. The Purple Sun Palace even treated it as their backyard. Although the vast sphere of influence was slightly barren in terms of training resources because it was far from Middle Land, the total amount of resources was not lacking at all. It was even more than the other four Holy Lands. Since the establishment of Xiang Palace, everyone in Xiang Palace had regarded themselves as the inheritors of Jiao Daoren. They were even known as the #1 sword sect in the world. This glory in Middle Land even surpassed that of the Crystal Palace of East Sea. If not for the appearance of Skyren's Xiao Baiyu a few hundred years ago, killing the pure yang sword celestial Lu Taiching of Xiang Palace with the cultivation of a late Dharma adept, causing the reputation of Xiang Palace to suffer. Among the 6 Holy Lands, Xiang Palace could even surpass the Crystal Palace and remove the word sword from the title of #1 sword sect in the world. For tens of thousands of years, among the 6 Holy Lands, Xiang Palace and Crystal Palace were known as the two palaces, one in the east and the other in the west. They were the real leaders of the 6 Holy Lands that had never fallen. Below these two sects, Wuxing School, Zhoushuan Tower, Skyward Pavilion, and Lingyun Valley were slightly inferior. For tens of thousands of years, although these 4 Holy Lands had always stood at the top of the world of training, they inevitably had their own ups and downs. They could never be as stable as Xiang Palace and Crystal Palace. However, in fact, before the loss of the Meridian Guarding Spirit Treasure of Wuxing School's reputation had never been weaker than Xiang Palace and Crystal Palace. Even when Wuxing School was at its peak, even the two palaces had to give way to them. However, after the loss of the Meridian Guarding Spirit Treasure, although Wuxing School still firmly occupied the position of the 5 Holy Lands, its strength inevitably declined, and it could no longer be on the same level as the two palaces. However, in the recent hundreds of years, except for a few great figures, the Water Branch no longer relied on the support of the school and the supplement of the inheritance of the Water Branch. Instead, they tried every means to completely revive the Water Branch, so that Wuxing School could return to the glory of the two palaces. Unfortunately, after the 5-element sect had schemed overseas for hundreds of years, they finally found out the whereabouts of the Broken Water lineage's Pulse Suppression Spirit Treasure, but the Pulse Suppression Spirit Treasure had fallen into the hands of others in the end, causing the entire 5-element sect to be greatly disappointed. Fortunately, there was always a way out. Just when Wuxing School was extremely disappointed by the disappearance of the treasure, Hanye Laozu, a disciple secretly trained by Wuxing School, found another treasure in the Northern Alliance that was enough to replace the Water Branch, which made everyone in Wuxing School wild with joy. A relic of the world's creation stained with Luan Daoist's tears. In the eyes of Lu Ping and others, the real value of the relic of the world's creation should be the few words left by Jiao Daoren on it. However, Wuxing School did not think so. Although Jiao Daoren's handwriting was the world's treasure, they would rather have the few drops of Luan Daoist's tears in the relic of the world's creation. When Wuxing School planned to destroy the Northern Alliance and let Hanye Laozu return to the central region with the relic of the world's creation and half of the Northern Alliance's property, they not only failed in the end, but also fought a great cultivator with great potential who had been secretly trained for many years, which was really a double loss. In desperation, Wuxing School had to adopt this more extreme method, even at the risk of completely falling out with Zhoushuan Tower. However, at the moment when Wuxing School's final plan was about to be carried out, they did not expect that it would be exposed by 3 green sea snakes, and these 3 green sea snakes looked like the 3 green sea snakes followers of Lu Tianping, the North Sea cultivator who had been in the limelight recently in the central region. In other words, this North Sea water immortal was very likely to be nearby at this time. If the Wuxing School's plan was leaked by this person, Shui Jiro's heart suddenly sank. If this matter was known by others after it was done, what was done could not be undone, and all the Holy Lands and sects could only pinch their noses and accept it. However, if this matter was exposed at this time, Wuxing School would definitely be the target of public criticism. Even if Wuxing School was one of the 6 great holy lands, in the face of the joint pressure of all the sects and holy lands in the cultivation world, perhaps it could only obediently give in. They absolutely could not let Lu Tianping leave alive. After hearing the news that the 3 green sea snakes had appeared and been captured, Shui Jiro immediately expected that Lu Tianping would definitely chase after his followers to rescue them. The news about the relationship between Lu Tianping's followers and the green sea snakes had caused an uproar in the cultivation world. Shui Jiro was sure that Lu Tianping did not dare to give up on his followers, otherwise the green sea snakes of the East Sea would certainly not let him go. Thus, Shui Jiro immediately summoned several Dharma manifestation stage direct disciples of the Broken Water lineage as well as direct disciples of the other lineages to set up a heavy ambush here, waiting for Lu Tianping to step in so that they could attack together. At the same time, the first heir of the Broken Water branch was an extremely cautious person. She knew that Lu Tianping was an existence that could even defeat a great cultivator. Therefore, even after setting up this ambush, she still did not feel at ease. She also notified the several second-generation great cultivators of the Broken Water branch who were secretly carrying out the plan. Once the battle to ambush Lu Tianping began, 2 great cultivators of Wuxing School would find time to rush over and kill this person who could possibly expose the plan of the Wuxing School. Although Shui Jiro had already set up an inescapable net and was confident that Lu Tianping would definitely fall into her ambush as soon as he came, Shui Jiro still had a trace of doubt in her heart. How did Lu Tianping avoid Mara's army that was besieging the 9 Mystical Tower and appear near the Qingming River between them and the 9 Mystical Tower? It should be known that the Wuxing School had originally taken advantage of the time when Mara's army had gathered here to besiege the 9 Mystical Tower. As a place where Mara's army had passed through, they were able to confirm that there was absolutely no possibility of a cultivator in this area and thus began to boldly carry out their plan. But how did Lu Tianping appear here? How did he survive when Mara's army passed through this area? How did the sentries that the sect had set up within a radius of several thousand kilometers fail to detect any traces of this person? Just as Shui Jiro's thoughts were running wild, she suddenly realized that after such a long time, if Lu Tianping was nearby, he should have arrived long ago. However, Lu Tianping still had not appeared. There could only be one reason: he had already arrived here and discovered the ambush that the Wuxing School had set up. How was this possible? It should be known that the ambush that Shui Jiro had set up this time was absolutely exquisite. Even a great cultivator would not be able to discover her plan before stepping into the ambush. Although Shui Jiro did not want to believe that Lu Tianping had discovered her plan, she still thought of something. She rang the raindrop bell in her hand and 2 invisible rays of light shot out from her eyes. Then, Shui Jiro let out a cry of surprise. A figure was actually hiding in the water vein and had already passed through her ambush. He was now not far from the place where the Wuxing School had set up their plan. Shui Jiro understood. Although she was certain that the person hiding in the water vein was Lu Tianping, she decided that it was better to warn him before she could clearly see the person hiding in the water vein. Who is it? A voice made the nearby cultivators of the Wuxing School feel as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Then, the figure of Lu Tianping was completely forced out of the water vein by the ringing of the raindrop bell in Shui Jiro's hand. Lu Tianping could actually hide in the water vein and hide so close to the place where they had set up their plan. However, he could not withstand the increasingly violent fluctuations in the water vein and was discovered by her. How did he do it? With a trace of doubt, Shui Jiro took the initiative to attack Lu Tianping. For the rise of the Wuxing School and the future of the Broken Water sect, she had to kill the person in front of her. Chapter 12:16. There were 2 major rivers in the world of practitioners in the Central Plains. One was the Yulon River, and the other was the Qingming River. In the world of cultivation, only a limited number of forces were capable of making use of these 2 rivers. The Yulon River's rivers were mainly controlled by the Koi clan and the 5 Elements sect. According to rumors, the Heavenly Arcana sect had already found and secured a portion of the Yulon River's rivers, intending to make use of them. However, due to the pressure from the 5 Elements sect and the Koi clan, they had always refused to do so. The other was the water vein of Qingming River. This water vein was jointly controlled by the Nine Mysteries Tower and the Soaring Sky Pavilion. However, the soaring cloud valley in the middle had originally supported the construction of a canal between Magic Cloud City and Qingming River, and had also helped them communicate with part of the water vein of Qingming River to support the development of Magic Cloud City. Unexpectedly, the demon clan in the Endless Mountain had benefited from it. Perhaps some powerful cultivators in the cultivation world could also find the water veins of these two great rivers and hide inside to cultivate, but in the end, they couldn't use the entire water vein for their own use like these sects. Moreover, with the power of these sects, as long as the area where the two rivers flowed was within the sphere of influence of these sects, there wouldn't be a single powerful being hiding in the water vein to cultivate. Because these sects monopolized the two river veins, if a powerful being were to sneak into the water vein within their sphere of influence, he would be quickly discovered, warned, driven away, or even killed by these great powers. Wuxing School had figured out this pattern. Taking advantage of the time when the Nine Mystical Tower was besieged by Mara, they came to dig a canal connecting the Qingming River and the Yulon River to steal the water of the Qingming River. And it just so happened that the location where Wuxing School dug the canal was at the edge of the Nine Mystical Towers territory. At this moment, they were digging a canal here. Firstly, the Nine Mystical Tower was besieged by Mo Luo. Even if they sensed that someone was pouring into the water vein of the Green Netherworld River, they had no time to care about it. Secondly, this place was so close to the Nine Mystical Tower. The Five Elements sect could completely confirm that there were no great mediums who could dive into the water vein to cultivate between the canal and the Nine Mystical Tower. Thirdly, and most importantly, the Nine Profound Tower had been besieged by the evil Luo army for several years now. In order to resist the evil Luo army's siege, the Nine Profound Tower had long since mobilized the Cyan Profound River's water vein's power to strengthen its defenses. The entire Cyan Profound River's water vein was constantly in a state of turmoil. This was something that the entire cultivation world knew about. However, the Nine Mystical Tower had a deep foundation. Although they had used the water, they did not use too much power. Obviously, they could still deal with the siege of Mara's army with ease. Recently, the turbulence of the water had suddenly increased. At most, people would think that the Nine Mystical Tower was gradually exerting its strength under the siege of Mara's army. No one would have thought that someone would steal the water of the Qingming River right in front of the Nine Mystical Tower. By the time the entire cultivation world realized the truth of the matter, the Five Elements sect would have already succeeded in communicating with the Green Jade Canal and used the stolen part of the Green Netherworld River to make up for the flaws in the inheritance of the broken water branch of the Five Elements sect. The Five Elements sect would then be able to return to the glory of the Five Elements sect that was no weaker than the Eastern and Western palaces in ancient times. At this point, the wood had already sailed the boat. Which sect in the world of practitioners would still dare to step forward and challenge the dignity of Wuxing School? Even the Nine Mystical Tower could only pinch their noses and accept the matter. Moreover, everyone knew that after the siege of the Nine Mystical Tower by Mara's army, the Nine Mystical Tower would definitely suffer a great loss. What awaited them would definitely be a period of recuperation. There was no way that the Nine Mystical Tower would fall out with the Nine Mystical Tower over this matter. Wuxing School's plan could be said to be extremely meticulous. However, even a wise man would make a mistake. Wuxing School would never have thought that someone would be bold enough to sneak into the water to train within the territory of the Nine Mystical Tower. Shueijiro was very sure that after Mara's army had gathered to attack the Nine Mystical Tower, Wuxing School's forces had already swept through the area of the Qingming River where Mara's army had passed through. There was clearly no trace of human existence, and for the past few years, Wuxing School had been constantly patrolling this area. How did this person manage to do it? Although Shueijiro had doubts in her heart, she knew that as long as she could capture this person, all her previous doubts would naturally be easily resolved. Moreover, at this time, for the sake of Wuxing School's plan of hundreds of years and for the complete revival of the water of the Qingming River, she could not allow Lu Ping to escape from her hands. Be careful. This person is Lu Tianping of the North Sea. Although the cultivators of Wuxing School who had been lying in ambush here knew that the person they had to deal with was Lu Tianping, Shueijiro could not help but warn them at this time. This was because Lu Ping's sudden appearance from the water was clearly beyond the expectations of all the cultivators of Wuxing School. Moreover, the moment Shueijiro made her move, she had already clearly understood the gap between her and Lu Tianping. Shueijiro could be said to be the most outstanding direct disciple of the water of the Wuxing School in the past hundreds of years. Since the decline of the water of the Qingming River, she was the only direct disciple of the water of the Qingming River who was not the weakest among the 5 great Juzi of Wuxing School. Moreover, Shueijiro's natal spiritual treasure, the Raindrop Bell, was also a first tribulation spiritual treasure. The Raindrop Bell was originally a natal spiritual treasure refined by Shueijiro herself. After Shueijiro showed her outstanding talent and strength that far surpassed that of cultivators at the same level as her, the senior cultivators of the Qingming River of Wuxing School, who were extremely eager to revive the water of the Qingming River, helped Shueijiro upgrade her natal spiritual treasure soon after she reached the Dharma manifestation stage. She passed the first thunder tribulation and became a natal spiritual treasure. Among the relatively famous third-generation cultivators in the cultivation world, it was not rare for them to have spiritual treasures bestowed by their sects. Even second tribulation spiritual treasures were common in the hands of the chief direct disciples of those sects. However, among these direct disciples, it was extremely rare for them to be able to upgrade their natal spiritual treasures to the level of spiritual treasures. Even Lu Ping himself, with the 13 magic treasures of the original Zhenchen formation, had only condensed the 9th restriction and reached the peak of the spirit-nourishing magic treasures. The power exerted by using one's own spirit treasure and using other spirit treasures was on a completely different level. When a cultivator with his own spirit treasure fought against a cultivator with other spirit treasures, he would always have a certain advantage. This was because he could control the spirit treasure more skillfully, activate the divine ability more quickly, and display a greater power of the divine ability. However, when Shueijiro, who had all these, faced Lu Ping's rain bell, she saw a stream of concentrated bluish-purple Real essence collide into her natal spiritual treasure. Shueijiro felt that her natal spiritual treasure seemed to have fallen into the sticky water at this moment. No matter how hard she tried to ring the bell, the power was greatly reduced because of the obstruction of the water. After being discovered, Lu Ping soared into the sky from the water vein. He first used the water control incantation to weaken the rain bell, then used the wave-treading art to step into the void, sending a huge force into the Qingming River. With a series of explosions, several disciples of the Wuxing School, who had been lying in ambush in the Qingming River to surround and kill Lu Ping, floated out of the water in a sorry state. Some of them even suffered internal injuries because of the huge force that invaded the water, and as soon as they floated to the surface, they spat out mouthfuls of blood. Shueijiro was furious. She never thought that Lu Ping could attack so fiercely and accurately in a split second, destroying most of the ambush she had carefully laid out in one fell swoop. Fortunately, it was only more than half of the ambush, and she still had a follow-up method. As long as she could hold him back for a while, when the great cultivators of her school, who were communicating with the water vein and digging the canal, arrived, Lu Tianping would have no choice but to surrender. Lu Tianping, don't you want the lives of your 3 followers of the green sea snake? Shueijiro was sure that Lu Ping would not dare to give up the lives of the Samling, so she was going to use this to make Lu Ping give in. As long as she could stall for a while, the mistake made by the Wuxing School on Lu Ping would be made up for. However, at this moment, what Shueijiro saw was Lu Ping suddenly smiling brightly. Shueijiro was stunned. At this moment, Lu Ping, who was in the air, suddenly attacked. In a trance, even Shueijiro herself could not see how Lu Ping split the 3 sword cheese in the air into 3 directions. Afterwards, Shueijiro suddenly felt a sense of palpitation descend upon her. She clearly remembered the direction in which the 3 strands of sword chi had slashed towards. It was the location of the remaining 3 direct lineal cultivators who had yet to make a move in the ambush she had set up earlier. Shueijiro clearly remembered that these 3 direct line adepts not only had the cover of a formation, but they were also good at hiding their tracks. Originally, Shueijiro had stayed near the ambush, ready to attack the moment Lu Tianping joined forces to trap Lu Tianping. She did not expect that Lu Tianping would even know the location of these three people so clearly. The three green sword chiefs, with the horns formed by the three flying swords, flew towards the three hidden directions in the air. The three Dharma adepts of the Wuxing school had no choice but to appear in the middle of the void to block Lu Ping's attack with all their strength. Looking at the three disciples of her sect, whose faces had suddenly turned deathly pale, being knocked back by the three sword dragons, Shui Jiro suddenly realized something. Although Lu Tianping was still at the mid-Dharma stage, his abilities were much stronger than before. Shui Jiro knew that if she failed today, once the news that Wuxing school had stolen the water vein of the Qingming River was known to the practitioners, the other Holy Lands would definitely interfere, especially the Purple Sun Palace and the Crystal Palace. They would definitely not let Wuxing school, which had the same strength and status as their own, appear. With a crisp ring, Shui Jiro rose into the air with a determined look on her face. After Lu Ping had defeated all the disciples of the Wuxing school who had ambushed him, she stood in front of Lu Ping alone. Lu Ping smiled and said, "You are still no match for me. Are you sure you want to stop me?" Chapter 12-17. Lu Ping had been practicing in seclusion in the water vein for more than 10 years. Although it was not a big deal for the gap between the mid-Dharma stage and the late Dharma stage, Lu Ping's own strength had improved by leaps and bounds in these 10 years. Shui Jiro and the other practitioners of Wuxing school still used the strength of Lu Ping that they had known for more than 10 years. Coupled with Lu Ping's surprise attack, Shui Jiro and the other disciples of Wuxing school naturally had their ambush broken by Lu Ping right from the start. However, looking at the female practitioner who was the strongest among the many disciples of Wuxing school in the ambush standing in front of him even though she knew she was no match for him, Lu Ping's words were contemptuous, but his eyes were fixed on the bell spirit treasure that was hovering above Shui Jiro's head and making a crisp ringing sound from time to time. She was able to upgrade her natal treasure to the level of a spirit treasure. Just this alone was enough for Lu Ping to not dare to be careless at all. Shui Jiro looked directly at Lu Ping and said coldly, "Lu Tianping, you really live up to your reputation. However, your followers are in our hands. If you don't want anything to happen to them, please come with me. Our Wuxing school will definitely treat you like a distinguished guest. Once our plan is completed, Shui Jiro will definitely apologize and send you back to the North Sea. What do you think?" Shui Jiro could see the mockery in Lu Ping's eyes. She did not avoid his eyes at all and continued, "Please believe in the credibility of our sect, Lu Daoyu. Moreover, your three followers." Shui Jiro deliberately did not finish her words. Presumably, Lu Ping also knew what she wanted to say. Lu Ping smiled slightly and said, "Rather than believe in the credibility of Wuxing school, I'd rather believe in you. Unfortunately, although I really hope to save Samling, I don't believe that your sect would dare to attack the three little guys at this time. The one who should be more afraid of the green sea snake is your sect." Lu Ping could see clearly that if he could escape, Wuxing school would be afraid that he would spread the news of the Green Jade Canal and would not dare to attack Samling. Lu Ping would also not dare to casually reveal the Green Jade Canal for the sake of Samling's safety. However, if he really fell into the hands of Wuxing school, then Wuxing school could decide whether to kill him or not. Moreover, Lu Ping did not have the habit of putting his life in the hands of others. Shui Jiro only confronted Lu Ping but did not make the first move. Immediately, Lu Ping understood that Shui Jiro was stalling for time. Perhaps the backup masters of Wuxing school had already arrived at this time. Lu Ping knew that he might not be able to rescue Samling today, but he also firmly believed that Wuxing school would definitely not dare to kill Samling at will. Therefore, he sneered and was about to leave this place with a conveyance light under his feet. How could Shui Jiro let Lu Ping escape so easily? Although she was not a match for Lu Ping, she was confident that she could stall him for a while if she tried her best. Therefore, the rainstorm bell in her hand suddenly rang out a series of ringing sounds. Lu Ping felt that a curtain of rain was falling in front of him. The dense ringing of the bell was like the sound of a curtain of rain falling on a river, making it difficult for him to distinguish which direction was east, west, and which made it extremely difficult for him to break through the obstruction of the curtain of rain. At this moment, Lu Ping's surroundings had turned into a rainstorm world. Lu Ping sneered in his heart as he thought, "This is interesting. This skill is obviously Shui Jiro's natal great skill with her natal spiritual treasure. And in this rainstorm world, hidden in the unknown darkness, Shui Jiro's killing intent would be Shui Jiro's hidden killing intent." Although Shui Jiro only wanted to stall Lu Ping as much as possible, if he really underestimated her, Shui Jiro naturally did not mind changing the entanglement into a sneak attack. However, a look of disdain flashed across Lu Ping's face. Then, under Shui Jiro's incredulous gaze, the rainstorm in the sky began to violently fluctuate. At this moment, Shui Jiro suddenly felt that her control over the rainstorm world formed by the great divine ability was suddenly snatched away. In that instant, almost 1/3 of the control over the rainstorm world was taken away, and the intensity of the struggle was constantly increasing. In a situation where Lu Ping could not use the Sword of True Spirit, Lu Ping did not have a natal spiritual treasure to increase the power of his great divine ability. Even so, this did not mean that Lu Ping did not have the means to resist Shui Jiro's natal spiritual treasure. After Lu Ping used the art of traversing clouds and summoning rain, even without the enhancement of a natal spiritual treasure, Lu Ping could still fight against Shui Jiro for control over the rainstorm world with his powerful cultivation. In the pitch-black rainstorm world, more and more of the rain began to scatter. Although Shui Jiro did her best to resist, her divine ability was rapidly disintegrating in the face of Lu Ping's unstoppable strength. Finally, a ray of light shone through the pitch-black rainstorm world. Amidst the mournful ringing of the rain bell, Lu Ping finally broke through Shui Jiro's great divine ability. However, this method of forcefully breaking the opponent's divine ability also caused Shui Jiro to be heavily injured. Her chest tightened and she spat out a mouthful of blood. At this moment, Shui Jiro was definitely at her weakest. It was the best time to take her life. Unfortunately, Lu Ping was not willing to stay for long. After disrupting this divine ability world, Lu Ping quickly discovered that someone was thinking about this area of Qingming River. Thus, his figure flashed twice and he was already several kilometers away. A ray of light descended from the sky. Mu Changsheng's figure flashed out of the light and he was the first to arrive. Seeing Shui Jiro's pale face, which clearly showed that she had used up a lot of vital energy and spiritual sense, he hurriedly asked with concern, "Junior Sister Ru, how are you?" Shui Jiro did not care about Mu Changsheng's expression and hurriedly said, "Quickly chase after him, that person is Lu Tianping. He already knows about our sect's plan." Mu Changsheng was shocked, but he could no longer care about anything else. A leaf flashed under his feet and instantly expanded to a radius of 3 meters. Then, carrying Mu Changsheng, the leaf swayed left and right as it chased in the direction that Lu Ping had left. Although this leaf-like magic treasure was swaying left and right as it flew, making it look extremely slow, it was actually as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, it had already disappeared into the horizon. After Mu Changsheng left, several rays of light flashed in the sky one after another, following behind Mu Changsheng. Each ray of light that swept past could leave a trail of light that was tens of meters long in the sky. This showed that the owners of these rays of light were all true mid-Dharma adepts. In fact, the two most dazzling rays of light in the lead were both late Dharma adepts. Shui Jiro glanced at Mu Changsheng in the distance, and a complicated look flashed in her eyes. Then, she swallowed some kind of elixir, turned around, and turned into a ray of light that merged into the Qingming River and disappeared. And just after Shui Jiro left, the surface of the Qingming River, which had just calmed down after a fierce battle, suddenly rippled, and then 2 figures slowly rose from the river. If Lu Ping was here, he would definitely be surprised by the identity of these 2 people. One of them was the first direct disciple of the Nine Shen Tower, Wei Yizhen, who had seriously injured Lu Ping previously, and the other was actually the newly promoted second-generation pure yang adept of the Nine Shen Tower, 8th Sister Zhu. However, at this time, 8th Sister Zhu looked very disheveled. Her face was pale, as if she had just been seriously injured. It was unknown how these 2 people had managed to escape from the situation where the Nine Shen Tower was surrounded by Mara's army. 8th Sister Zhu's expression was fierce, and she said in a sinister voice, "Very well. This bunch of trash from Wuxing School actually dared to take advantage of the situation. Not only did they plot against the water vein of the Qingming River, they actually dared to be so arrogant in front of the Ninefold Tower. Do they really think that this is their backyard? At the side, Wei Yizhen hurriedly said, "Uncle Master, please calm down. A little impatience will spoil the great plan. At this time, it is more important for us to think of a way to break the siege of the sects. As for the despicable acts of the Wuxing school, when the sects recover, they will naturally take revenge." With great difficulty, Eighth Sister Zhu suppressed the anger in her heart and said fiercely, "We can't just let it go like this. The fact that Wuxing school plotted against the water vein of the Qingming River must be leaked. At this time, we can't care about the water vein of the Qingming River, and others can also forget about taking advantage of the situation. I don't believe that the sects like the Purple Sun Palace and the Skyward Pavilion will allow Wuxing school to replenish the water vein of the 5 elements and improve their sect's strength." Wei Yizhen laughed bitterly. How could he be willing to be taken advantage of like this? He even suspected that this time, the sieging army had strangely gathered on such a large scale to besiege the 9 mystical tower. Could Wuxing school also be behind this? However, this time, they had used the backup plan left by their sects and paid a huge price to escape from the siege of Mara's army without anyone knowing. Their plan was extremely secretive, so they were not only hiding from Mara, but also from the cultivators of other sects. However, at this time, Eighth Sister Zhu wanted to expose the fact that Wuxing school was plotting against the Qingyu Canal. This was extremely inappropriate in Wei Yizhen's opinion. However, Eighth Sister Zhu was a senior of the sect and one of the most powerful pure young Laozu in the 9 mystical tower. Even if Wei Yizhen wanted to, he didn't dare to do it openly. Moreover, in Wei Yizhen's opinion, perhaps after the fact that Wuxing school was plotting against the water vein of the Qingming River, ordinary people might not be able to detect that it was a cultivator of the 9 mystical tower who leaked the news. At the same time, dozens of miles away, Lu Ping looked at the person in front of him and couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Senior, what do you mean by this?" Xiao Baiyu laughed and said, "I want you to join us." "How about it? Do you want to join us?" Lu Ping didn't even think about it and said, "No." Xiao Baiyu still had a smile on his face and said, "Don't worry, think about it again. It will take the people of Wuxing school a while to catch up. Don't worry, when they arrive, the old man will leave. It definitely won't affect the fair fight between you two." At this time, Lu Ping's divine thoughts had also sensed the several fleeting lights coming in his direction from a distance. Seeing that the old man in front of him still refused to give in, once Lu Ping refused, Lu Ping could even guess that the old man in front of him would definitely leave the moment the cultivators of Wuxing school arrived. Without exposing his own identity, he would deliberately cause Lu Ping to fight with the 2 cultivators of Wuxing school who were chasing after him. This was what he wanted to see. Chapter 12:18. Looking at Lu Ping, whose expression kept changing, Xiao Baiyu smiled again and said, "I forgot to tell you, the 2 Wuxing school practitioners who are chasing after us are at the late Dharma stay." Lu Ping's expression became even uglier. He smiled bitterly and said, "Senior, you are the pure young Laozu. How can a minor repairs disciple like me fathom what you are planning? Even if I were to join in, what use would I be?" Xiao Baiyu seemed to be able to guess Lu Ping's thoughts and said, "Furthermore, I'm afraid you are still thinking that if we are in danger, you will be the first to be pushed out as cannon fodder. Is that right?" Lu Ping's silence was, in fact, a tacit approval of this matter. The things that the pure young Laozu planned were often things that could decide the life and death of a sect with a single word. Judging from Xiao Baiyu's tone, Xiao Baiyu was not the only pure young who wanted to pull Lu Ping into the group. Moreover, if several pure young practitioners were to gather together, what they planned would not only be the life and death of a sect, but also the life and death of the entire cultivation world. Lu Ping trembled at the thought of such an important matter. Not to mention whether he was qualified to participate in it, even if he was, with the weight of Zhenling behind him, if anything went wrong, the pure young practitioners could just leave, and their opponents would not be able to take revenge on the pure young practitioners. However, if that happened, Zhenling would become the punching bag of the pure young practitioners. Although Zhenling currently had the strength of a large sect, In the eyes of these pure young practitioners, it was really nothing. What did Xiao Baiyu and the group behind him see in him? Xiao Baiyu laughed involuntarily and said, "The reason why I pulled you into the group was actually Laozu's idea. It was also because of your potential that the old man decided to help you. Moreover, you may be able to receive guidance from people like the old man here, which will undoubtedly reduce the number of detours in your cultivation. If you can advance to the pure yang level in the future, at least our organization will have a successor." In fact, he had taken a fancy to Lu Ping's potential. However, when Lu Ping thought about how the pure yang practitioners of the 6 Holy Lands, Laozu, had joined forces to kill him on the Qingming River outside Magic Cloud City, he could not help but shudder. Lu Ping tilted his head and pondered for a moment, then said, "If it was just me, even if I knew that the organization you are in is full of danger, I would not hesitate to join it. After all, as the saying goes, wealth comes from danger. However, I have a sect behind me. The sect I belong to is not as good as the pure yang practitioners of Laozu. If my identity is exposed, I don't think that Zhenling can stand firm under the thunderous wrath of the 6 Holy Lands." Xiao Baiyu was startled and said, "You have to think about it carefully. Although Zhenling has 10,000 years of inheritance, the one who is really outstanding is only the Grand Ginseng Laozu, who is 6 or 7,000 years old. Including the pure yang practitioners of Laozu and the True Soul, there is only one of them. Moreover, as far as the old man knows, this Laozu did not stay in the pure yang cultivation for a long time and did not have the time to leave too many arrangements for Zhenling. Otherwise, Zhenling would not have been able to continue the inheritance of a medium-sized sect for such a long time after this Laozu. So, if you want to advance to the pure yang level in the future, there will not be many things that you can learn from, so it will be very difficult." Seeing that Lu Ping was not moved, Xiao Baiyu continued, "If you can join us, the old man will help you rescue the 3 green sea snakes. What do you think?" This last point made Lu Ping very tempted, but in the end, Lu Ping still shook his head and said, "Senior, you don't have to worry about it, I will solve it myself." Xiao Baiyu's face stiffened. With his status, he had once again tried to rope in a minor repairs at the mid-Dharma stage, but unexpectedly, his good words were still rejected. Naturally, he was angry. However, before he could lose his temper, Lu Ping's figure suddenly flew backward. While Xiao Baiyu was stunned, Lu Ping went straight to the 2 great cultivators from Wuxing School who were chasing after him. Lu Ping would rather face the pursuit of the cultivators from Wuxing School than accept Xiao Baiyu's help. For a moment, Xiao Baiyu was a little shocked. However, after Lu Ping left, the air beside Xiao Baiyu fluctuated, and a man in his 50s, Laozu, suddenly appeared there. It looked as if this old man had been standing there all along. Previously, Lu Ping was just a few feet away from Xiao Baiyu, but he did not notice the presence of another person beside Xiao Baiyu. "Mph, what an ungrateful junior. I don't know why you value him so much. If it was the old man, I would have killed him directly." The old man was obviously very dissatisfied with Xiao Baiyu's accommodating of Lu Ping, thinking that this was really damaging to the reputation of a pure young cultivator. However, just as the old man finished speaking, not far behind Xiao Baiyu, an old man who also looked like an old farmer appeared and said, "I think this kid has some character. Brother Xiao, why don't you test him again?" If Lu Ping was here, he would definitely recognize the old man who had appeared behind him. He was the pure young cultivator from the Tianxian sect, Qifan Laozu. Oh! The old man in his 50s obviously did not expect Qifan Laozu to value a minor repairs at the mid-Dharma stage so much. He said, "Although that minor repairs just now is quite strong, isn't it a bit too much to say that he is worthy of the 2 of you's attention?" Xiao Baiyu and Qifan Laozu looked at each other. Xiao Baiyu laughed and said, "This guy's swordsmanship is not bad. Unfortunately, he is not a pure swordsman. The old man would like to change his habit." Qifan Laozu said, "This kid has a lot of tricks up his sleeves. Back then, he was only at the late core forging stage, but he was able to kill a Dharma direct disciple of the Taishen sect. He is also very cunning and intelligent. If he were to stand on our side and achieve something in the future, he would definitely be a great help to us and a great enemy of the 6 Holy Land." The old man somewhat agreed with Qi Fan Laozu's words. After all, it could be considered as a reason. As for what Xiao Baiyu had said, the old man pursed his lips. Xiao Baiyu wanted to give him some pointers. Did he want to find a successor? Even if he wanted to find one, there were plenty in Skyrend. Why would he need to poach someone from a medium-sized sect? At this time, an irritable voice sounded from above the three of them. That kid is not bad. My clan's child once mentioned to me that those who are stronger than my clan's children are considered to be very rare among cultivators of the same level. If we want to make him our disciple, we can just capture him. Why would he dare to resist? Why is he so long-winded? Can't we get down to business? Xiao Baiyu dug his ears, as if the irritable voice had hurt his earlobes. He then said, Brother Yuan, why are you so impatient? There are many strange things happening this time. How did the 9 mystical tower provoke such a huge army of Mara for no reason? They have been besieged for more than 10 years. Since we are here, why don't we try to find out the reason? The 50-year-old Laozu looked displeased. Then what about the Wuxing school's theft of the Qingming River? Xiao Baiyu said, without the spirit treasure, even if the Wuxing school manages to draw the Qingming River's water vein, it is not impossible for them to completely connect the Qingming River and the Yulon River's water vein, but it is not something that can be done in a short period of time. The 50-year-old Laozu retorted, the 9 mystical tower has been besieged for more than 10 years, and the Wuxing school only started digging the Green Jade Canal 7 or 8 years after the 9 mystical tower was besieged to connect the 2 water veins. It is clear that the Wuxing school has already made sufficient preparations. Perhaps the Wuxing school already has the means to combine the 2 water veins. It is best for us not to be distracted by other matters. The irritable voice in the air sounded again. This time, it sounded impatient. Will it kill you to take a look? It's not like we are going to help the 9 mystical tower fight. Besides, the 9 mystical tower may not need us. The 50-year-old Laozu sighed and said, perhaps we will really get into trouble just by taking a look. According to what the old man knows, among the Mara's army that is besieging the 9 mystical tower, there are probably no less than 10 heavenly demons and no less than 40 to 50 asuras. Even if the strength of each heavenly demon is slightly weaker than us pure yang experts, the difference is not that big. Once there are 1 or 2 asuras helping us, it will be extremely difficult for us to get rid of them. Moreover, the heavenly demons have a majestic psyche, so it will be extremely difficult for us to get past them. 7 Fan Laozu, who was at the side, suddenly raised his eyes and said coldly, Friend Yuan seems to be very familiar with the strength of the Mara's army that is besieging the 9 mystical tower. However, hasn't the Yuan family always been the vanguard in fighting against Mara? Why are you so afraid this time? The 50-year-old man was actually a pure yang adept of the Yuan family. Upon hearing 7 Fan Laozu's words, anger flashed across his face, but he forcefully suppressed it and said coldly, in order to spy on the strength of the Mara's army that is besieging the 9 mystical tower, our Yuan family has already sacrificed the lives of 4 Dharma adepts, one of whom was even at the late Dharma stage. Furthermore, do not forget that at this time, on the Tianxian sect's Mara battlefield near the sea, our Yuan family adepts are still at the forefront of the battle, so please be careful when you speak, friend 7 Fan. 7 Fan Laozu rolled his eyes and did not take the Yuan elder's words to heart. He continued, Are you spying on the strength of the Mara's army to prepare for the rescue of the 9 mystical tower? The Yuan elder, who had been slightly angered earlier, suddenly calmed down. He chuckled and said calmly, Rest assured, friend 7 Fan. The Yuan family is only following the teachings of our ancestors to eliminate the threat of Mara. It has nothing to do with the rescue of the 9 mystical tower. 7 Fan Laozu did not say anything else, but Xiao Baiyu, who was beside him, changed the topic and said, In that case, when the time comes, I will only take a look from afar and will not go too deep into the Mara's army. Next up is the matter of the Wuxing school. However, it seems that the Wuxing school's plan this time is not simple. They actually used a single Tenma people to distract the Ziyang Palace's attention. Otherwise, the Wuxing school would not be so brazen as to open a canal between the Qingming River and the Yulon River to connect the water veins. At this point, Xiao Baiyu could not help but pause and turn to look behind him. He saw a man dressed in strange clothes step out of the void and could not help but ask curiously, "Brother Feng, you are?" Chapter 12:19. Not only Xiao Baiyu was surprised by the appearance of the strangely dressed man, but Yuan Elder and Qi Fan Laozu were also surprised. The strangely dressed man surnamed Maro said, "I'm afraid that little guy just now is a little troublesome. Do you need me to help him?" This time, not only Xiao Baiyu and others, but also a skinny practitioner in his 30s who was hiding in the air from the place where the irritable voice came from also jumped out. In the blink of an eye, he walked around the strangely dressed man twice, and shouted repeatedly, "That's strange. Strange. Feng Lu, you have always killed people without blinking an eye. Why are you concerned about a human race minor repairs at this time?" This seemingly skinny and inconspicuous cultivator was the former general of the great spiritual ape clan, the pure young cultivator Yuan Pokong. Previously, during the battle at the Azure Nether River, Yuan Pokong's shocking rod had become the key to breaking the deadlock. However, after the pure young cultivators dispersed, this Yuan Pokong followed Xiao Baiyu. Many cultivators in the cultivation world knew that Yuan Pokong had been defeated by Xiao Baiyu. With such a history, Yuan Pokong's following was bound to be another battle. Who could have expected that these two would appear here at the same time and seem to have a very close relationship? The strangely dressed man Feng Lu's face was indifferent and his voice was as cold as metal rubbing against each other. He said, "This kid has some relationship with my spirit beast sect. It's fine if the old man didn't see him, but since he saw him, he naturally wouldn't ignore him." The pure young Laozu were stunned. On the contrary, Xiao Baiyu glanced in the direction where Lu Ping had left and shook his head. "Forget it. Although this kid is at a disadvantage, he has been retreating without panic. Obviously, he still has some tricks up his sleeves. It's inevitable that he will suffer a loss, but he won't die. Young man, it's good to let him suffer some setbacks." Xiao Baiyu's words surprised the pure young cultivators again. Even the pure young cultivator from the spirit beast sect, Feng Lu, was no exception. To be able to resist the joint attack of two great practitioners from the Holy Land, they probably didn't have this kind of strength when they were at the mid-Dharma stage. However, none of the pure young cultivators questioned Xiao Baiyu's judgment. Obviously, although the 5 Dharma Laozu present were all great divines who could influence the situation of the entire cultivation world, Xiao Baiyu was the leader of the 5 Dharma Laozu. Yuan Pokong also stood on his tiptoes and gazed into the distance for a moment. Then, he turned around and said, "His strength is indeed not bad. Speaking of which, when my clan's child mentioned him in front of me, his face was full of admiration. We, the intelligent great apes, would only praise opponents who are much stronger than us. It can be seen that my clan's child's eyesight is as sharp as old Yuan's, just like how I admire old Xiao. However, if it's someone like old Feng who is only slightly stronger than us, we, old Yuan, will not accept you no matter what. Moreover, we will think of ways to surpass you and defeat you." Feng Lu snorted coldly and said with contempt, "If I can beat you into submission like old Xiao, won't I have one less opponent to practice with in the future?" The intelligent great apes were scared when they heard this and roared, "Old Feng, come, I, old Yuan, will fight you for 300 round." Feng Lu laughed coldly and said, "I'd be happy to, but there's no need for 300 rounds. 3 rounds will do." T. Yuan Pokong didn't even care about fighting. He rolled up his sleeves and placed his hands on his waist, as if he wanted to argue with Lung Mian Feng verbally. However, coupled with the fact that he was stomping his feet, it was no different from cursing in the street. Qi Fan Laozu was like a troublemaker at this moment. He suddenly opened his mouth and said, "All talk but no action. You two cowards." The intelligent great apes and Feng Lu both frowned. Qi Fan Laozu, on the other hand, looked calm and relaxed. He was sure that the two of them wouldn't dare to fight here. Instead, he turned to Xiao Baiyu and asked, "Old Xiao, do you know of any other way for Wuxing School to merge the 2 water veins of Qingming River and Yulon River, apart from the halving treasure?" Xiao Baiyu smiled and said, "I'm afraid I'll have to ask my friend, Xiao Tian." Although I know a little, I don't know as much as Brother Yuan, who is from the #1 clan in the world. According to legend, the two largest rivers in the world were formed at the beginning of the world. Peng Daoren and Jiao Daoren fought all the way. In the end, both of them smashed down from the sky and smashed through several layers of water, forming the source of the two great rivers, Qingming River and Yulon River. Lu Ping had even gone to the source of the Yulon River, Lake of Fallen Sage, and obtained enormous benefits from there. These two great rivers, one flowing east, the other flowing southeast. However, the two rivers were always inexplicably incompatible. It wasn't that no school in the world of Zeuxianists had thought of connecting the two great rivers, drawing and merging the branches of the two great rivers, so that they could use the two rivers at the same time. However, after the canal was built, there was no way to fuse the branches of the two water veins. Although the canal could still be used, without the support of the fusion of the water veins, it naturally lost its meaning to the cultivators' sect. Some people in the world of Zeuxianists speculated that the reason why the two rivers could not be merged was because of the origin of the two rivers. The Qingming River was formed by Peng Daoren, while the Yulon River was formed by Jiao Daoren. The two of them were mortal enemies. Perhaps the two rivers contained the will of the two of them, which was why they were always incompatible. They all looked at Yuan Xiaotian, but Yuan Xiaotian also shook her head and said, "I'm afraid the old man knows about the same as all of you, but it's just some legends about Luan Daoist." And Daoist Chan Yuan Pokong was surprised and said, "What? Did Wuxing school find another relic left by these two Laozu?" Yuan Xiaotian quickly waved her hand and said, "It's not so easy to find the relic of the world of Zeuxianists. The two halves of a spirit treasure made from half of Daoist Chan's water talisman, and the handkerchief of real spirit containing the tear of Luan Daoist. Wuxing school has lost two relic of the world of Zeuxianists in a row. It's not easy to find the third one." Yuan Pokong said impatiently, "We, old Yuan, know all of this. Say something useful." Yuan Xiaotian was not influenced by Yuan Pokong. She still said slowly, "They may have found the inheritance of the water talisman." "What? That's impossible." Yuan Pokong was shocked at first, but then he jumped up and said, "How could the inheritance of the water talisman be passed down?" It was said that Jiao Daoren went to open up the overseas cultivation world. This time, Peng Daoren came looking for him, and the two of them fought again. The place of the fight was thousands of miles away from the sea, and thousands of miles away was the newly opened world of cultivation that Jiao Daoren had just opened up. This time, the commotion caused by the battle between the two grew larger and larger. They fought from the North Sea all the way to the South Sea. On the surface of the sea, they happened to walk a line that sealed off the Central Plains and the overseas cultivation world. This line was the space that had been ravaged by the battle between the two, forming a natural moat that separated the Central Plains and the overseas cultivation world. It was the Ocean of Storms. At that time, the fight between the two of them was so big that it might even break up the newly opened world. In order to protect this newly opened world, Daoist Chan and Luan Daoist worked together to create a talisman, which was the water talisman. With this talisman, the two heaven-splitting Taoists worked together to separate Peng Daoren and Luan Daoist from the fierce battle, but more importantly, they eliminated some of the broken space in the storm ocean. Although in the end, the water talisman was not able to completely calm the storm ocean, it prevented the storm ocean from spreading further, which would affect the safety of the newly formed world. At the same time, it also opened up some passageways on the storm ocean, so that in the future, the Central Plains and the overseas world could communicate through treasured ships. The storm ocean was originally the remains of the battle between Peng Daoren and Jiao Daoren, and it was also the remains of the spiritual battle between the two Laozu. Compared to the Qingming River and the Yulon River, the formation of the storm ocean was undoubtedly the result of the two heaven-splitting Taoists' battle of wills. Since the water talisman could suppress the spread of the storm ocean, calm the turbulence of the storm ocean, and open up many passageways connecting the Central Plains and the overseas world, it naturally had the ability to fuse the Qingming River and the Yulon River into one. In the past, the founder of the water-cut branch of Wuxing School, Water-cut Laozu, had once obtained the incomplete map of the water talisman left behind by Luan Daoist. Then, he suddenly had the idea to use this half of the map to make up for the innate defect of the water-cut branch. But at that time, although Wuxing School had established its position as a holy land in the world of practitioners, it was not as powerful as today's Wuxing School. Although the innate defect of the water-cut branch had been discovered by water-cut Laozu, at that time, water-cut Laozu thought it was not serious enough to affect the rise and fall of the whole school. This was also the reason why water-cut Laozu did not immediately make up for it. What's more, although water-cut Laozu had obtained the half of the water talisman, he could not figure out the method of making the whole water talisman from it. Helplessly, he fused the half of the water talisman into the two pieces of the spirit treasure. This caused Wuxing School to lose the inheritance of the half of the water talisman after losing the two pieces of the spirit treasure. It was said that the other half of the water talisman was in the hands of Taoist Chan. At that time, some followers asked Taoist Chan for the inheritance of the water talisman, but for some unknown reason, Taoist Chan never agreed. Thus, the inheritance of the water talisman was lost. At this time, when Yuan Pokong suddenly heard that Wuxing School might have obtained the inheritance of the water talisman, he naturally felt that it was unbelievable. This was totally inconsistent with the legend about Taoist Chan refusing to leave the inheritance of the water talisman behind in the world of practitioners. Although it was said that the water talisman was made by Luan Daoist and Taoist Chan, the inheritance of the half of the water talisman in Wuxing School came from Luan Daoist. In addition, the Luan Daoist seemed to be closely related to the inheritance of a whole set of breaking talismans. Therefore, there was a legend in the world of practitioners that Luan Daoist was also the originator of talisman making. Chapter 1220. As Lu Ping turned around to face the cultivators from Wuxing School, his divine consciousness naturally swept behind him. However, even though Xiao Baiyu was clearly standing there, Lu Ping's divine consciousness could not sense his aura at all. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat, and he unconsciously glanced behind him again, only to see that Xiao Baiyu was clearly smiling at him. This was a huge blow to Lu Ping, who had always been very confident in his own divine consciousness. And just as Lu Ping was fighting with the two great cultivators from Wuxing School, every time he dodged and moved, he could clearly see the figure of Xiao Baiyu, who was standing more than 10 miles away. However, the two great cultivators from Wuxing School who were fighting Xiao Baiyu never saw the appearance of Xiao Baiyu. This made Lu Ping even more shocked by the methods of these pure young Laozu. The reason why Lu Ping would rather turn around to deal with the two late Dharma adepts from Wuxing School instead of being forced to join them by Xiao Baiyu was not only because he was unwilling to accept such a method of coercion, but more importantly, in the past 10 years of seclusion, Lu Ping had great confidence in the growth of his own abilities. Therefore, when Lu Ping turned around to face the attacks from the two great cultivators from Wuxing School, he did not take any defensive or evasive measures. Instead, he turned his pair of flying swords into a Milky Way river and rushed towards the two great cultivators. He wanted to break out of the encirclement from the hands of these two great cultivators. The 10 years of seclusion in the Qingming River had not only improved Lu Ping's cultivation, but also the Great River East Sword technique. Looking at the oncoming Lu Ping, who actually dared to split his supernatural power into two and attack the two great cultivators separately, the two great cultivators from Wuxing School had a contemptuous smile on their faces at the same time. This young man was really bold. Even if he had the experience of defeating great cultivators before, he was still too arrogant if he wanted to fight one against two. The two great cultivators, who had made up their minds to teach this young cultivator a lesson, roared at the same time. One of them waved his hand, and the magic treasure in his hand immediately split the surging Milky Way in half. The other did not move at all, but half a mountain rose behind him, standing in the middle of the Milky Way of sword light like a huge pillar that supported the sky. No matter how the sword waves struck him, he never moved an inch. However, the two great cultivators were still shocked. They had thought that after breaking Lu Ping's arrogant attack, they would immediately launch a counterattack and give Lu Ping a head-on blow. However, although the two Milky Ways were both neutralized by them, the powerful impact contained in the Milky Way of swordlight made them no longer have the strength to launch a counterattack against Lu Ping. It was already very good that they could still stand in front of Lu Ping. However, Lu Ping's methods had never been limited to a single attack. Usually, he would launch a series of follow-up attacks, and this time was no exception. The two heavenly rivers split into 4 streams behind the 2 great cultivators. However, the moment they reached the back of the 2 great cultivators, they abruptly turned back and turned into 4 strange flood dragons that bared their fangs and brandished their claws, charging at the 2 great cultivators from behind. The 2 great cultivators were shocked once again. They did not expect that Lu Ping's control of his natal power had reached such a fine level, and they did not expect Lu Ping's spiritual essence to be so strong. He could split one divine power into 2 attacks, and he could still maintain such a powerful force. At the same time, the speed at which Lu Ping was charging forward did not change at all, and he was still charging straight at the 2 great cultivators. Lu Ping was actually attacking the 2 great cultivators from Wuxing School in a pincer on his own. The 2 great cultivators were shocked at first, and then they felt greatly humiliated. A 3rd-generation minor repairs, who was only at the mid-Dharma stage, could actually force the 2 of them into such a situation. In the future, if word of this got out, would they still have any face left? On the left, the great cultivator who had split Lu Ping's Milky Way divine power had a folding fan hanging above his head. However, this great cultivator did not care about the sword dragons that were pouncing at him from behind, and his eyes were fixed on Lu Ping, who was flying towards him. Then, he suddenly shook his wide sleeves, and a gust of wind even tore the surrounding space apart. As for the 2 sword dragons that were pouncing at him, they were forcefully blown into nothingness by this gust of wind. Meanwhile, the folding fan hanging above his head gently waved at Lu Ping, who was not far away. Unlike the violent waves caused by the flapping of his sleeves, this folding fan did not cause the slightest ripple, and it seemed to be completely silent. However, Lu Ping, who was flying towards him not far away, suddenly changed his expression. What made Lu Ping's expression change was also the great cultivator on the right. This great cultivator did not even care about the 2 sword dragons that were pouncing at him from behind. It was as if he had lifted the half of the mountain that was rising above his head, and before the 2 sword dragons could get close to him, they were smashed into pieces by the protective shield hanging down from the mountain that was hanging high in the air. At the same time, this great cultivator let out a hair, and the half of the mountain floating above his head suddenly emitted rays of yellow light and rapidly expanded outwards, merging into the undercurrent that the great cultivator on the left was fanning with the folding fan. When the yellow light merged into the undercurrent, it seemed to expose the invisible undercurrent, but in fact, the undercurrent could not hide from Lu Ping's divine sense. Instead, the power of the undercurrent itself made Lu Ping very wary. After fusing with the earthen yellow light of the other great cultivator, the surging undercurrent instantly turned into a sandstorm that covered the heavens and the earth. Lu Ping's pouncing body was instantly drowned by the yellow sandstorm. Deep in the center of the storm, Lu Ping felt countless sand and dust surging under the raging storm, launching a continuous impact on Lu Ping's protective aura. Lu Ping's protective aura that had long reached the phenomenal success stage faded away layer by layer under the erosion of the sandstorm. Thinking of the scene where Lu Ping's Azure WM disturbing the seesaw technique was destroyed by the storm of the great cultivator on the left, Lu Ping did not dare to be the slightest bit negligent. The cloud sail wrapped around Lu Ping, and a black flag floated in the air. A waterfall-like stream of light hung down from the fluttering flag, shrouding Lu Ping in it. On the light shield, purple-gold auspicious clouds piled up. No matter how the yellow sandstorm raged, it was always able to block it several tens of meters away. However, at this time, Lu Ping was still besieged by the magical powers of the 2 great cultivators. Although he could protect himself, he could only take the beating. Just as Lu Ping stabilized his footing, he suddenly noticed an unusual change above his head. Then, a black shadow appeared above his head. Even the raging yellow sandstorm couldn't conceal its presence. It was the mountain-like spirit treasure that hovered above the great cultivator on the right. Lu Ping's eyes widened in shock. His eyes widened in shock, and he could tell that it was the mountain-like spirit treasure hovering above the great cultivator on the right. At this time, Lu Ping realized that his divine sense had been greatly hindered in this sandstorm. Otherwise, he would not have been alerted when the mountain-like numinous treasure was about to hit him. Lu Ping knew that this was the beginning of the joint attack of the two great cultivators, and there must be endless follow-up methods. At this time, Lu Ping was deep in the sandstorm. His vision and divine sense were blocked, but the two great cultivators outside the sandstorm were not affected by their magical powers. A huge white jade lotus suddenly appeared above Lu Ping's head, and then gradually bloomed in the raging sandstorm. After a loud bang, the white jade lotus firmly stopped the mountain-like numinous treasure that was falling from mid-air. However, this sudden blow made the white jade lotus dim and almost fall apart. Under the lotus, Lu Ping's face also turned pale. The impact of the huge mountain-like numinous treasure when it fell was not so easy to withstand. The fact that Lu Ping was able to lift the spirit treasure in his hand with brute force clearly surprised the two great cultivators. However, they were clearly used to working together. As soon as the mountain-shaped spirit treasure smashed down, the folding fan in the other great cultivator's hand suddenly disappeared. In the sandstorm, just as Lu Ping held up the mountain-like numinous treasure, 12 sharp swords had already pierced through the madly dancing sandstorm and stabbed towards the cloud sails that were 30 meters away from Lu Ping. How were these 12 sharp swords? They were clearly the ribs of a folding fan. These 12 fan bones were coming from the mountain-like numinous treasure that Lu Ping had blocked with all his might. His Junqi was at the moment when his old strength had been exhausted and he had not yet recovered. Although the cloud sails and the water-controlling flag were extremely superior defensive magic treasures, Lu Ping still could not block this sudden attack when he did not have the time to complement his Junqi. Although the shield had been pierced, the water-controlling flag and the cloud sails had still consumed most of the power of the 12 fan bones. At this time, a dense sword light rose around Lu Ping's body. Seeping sword technique. After a series of metallic clangs, the thin water-flowing sword managed to block 7 of the fan ribs with all its might. The nether water sword flashed and cut down another fan rib. Then, Lu Xiaoping jumped out from behind Lu Ping and cut down another fan rib. However, the remaining 3 fan ribs were still flying towards Lu Ping's body relentlessly. Ding, ding, ding. 3 crisp sounds rang out almost at the same time, and Lu Ping's body floated up from the ground. The 2 purple jade bracelets, one above and one below, turned into a 3-foot-long hoop, covering Lu Ping's body and blocking the last 3 fan bones. The purple jade bracelets were a pair of First Tribulation spirit treasures that Lu Ping had obtained after killing Hanya Laozu. Although they had been nurtured by Hanya Laozu with an ice attribute Kung Fu and were not very compatible with Lu Ping, this did not prevent Lu Ping from liking these 2 spirit treasures. Although the power of these 2 spirit treasures in Lu Ping's hands was not too high, it was still easy for them to block the 3 fan bones at this time. The cloud that was pierced through turned into a cloud of chaos and shrouded Lu Ping in the middle of the sandstorm. When Lu Ping blocked the fan bones attack, the 2 great cultivators outside the sandstorm didn't see what was happening inside the chaotic cloud. Chapter 1221. It was unclear whether it was intentional or not, but when the 12 fan bones pierced through the cloud sail, the magic cloud shield turned chaotic. The 2 great cultivators outside the sandstorm didn't know what had happened inside the shield, but the great cultivator holding the folding fan knew that the 12 fan bones didn't succeed. But the 2 great cultivators weren't in a hurry. While Lu Ping blocked the 12 fan ribs, another piece of paper floated out from the sandstorm and merged with the yellow sand. Then, Lu Ping noticed that the world around him had changed again. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. The drawing was naturally the fan's surface, and now that the fan's surface had fused with the sandstorm, it was obvious that the fan's surface was an array diagram. And Lu Ping was no longer besieged by the 2 supreme skills. Instead, with the array diagram's support, he was constantly being besieged by the 2 supreme skills. Theurgies had a beginning and an end, but a formation could always make the theurgies start over and over again. Lu Ping knew that if things went on like this, he would definitely be trapped by the 2 great cultivators. Even if he could hold on, when the other cultivators of the Wuxing school arrived, he would still die. Taking advantage of the chaotic situation created by the cloud sail and the water-controlling flag, Lu Ping made up his mind and grabbed the 2 halves of the spiritual treasure. But he still felt it wasn't enough, so he patted his chest. The sword of the true spirit, Mo Li, appeared quietly in front of him. The appearance of the sword of the true spirit didn't attract the attention of the world like before, but the spirit of the two halves of the spiritual treasure still retreated from the back of Lu Ping's hand to his shoulder. The two halves of the spiritual treasure didn't show up in front of the two great cultivators, but the two long blade lights still pierced through the sandstorm. The two great cultivators outside the sandstorm were startled. What's this? When the two great cultivators didn't know what the two blade lights were from Lu Ping, another shocking sword light pierced through the sandstorm silently and appeared in front of them again. It formed a triangle with the previous two blade lights, as if they were helping each other. No one could detect the signs of the third blade light before it appeared. However, after it appeared so abruptly, although the blade light still looked ordinary, there seemed to be a strange power in the dark that made it impossible for anyone to ignore its existence, as if it was born to be the center of the world. However, although the third blade light attracted the attention of the two great cultivators, the moment it appeared, the three blade lights began to move. At the same time, the two great cultivators from Wuxing School also seemed to have noticed something wrong. They began to work together to operate the yellow sand refining formation that they had set up. However, something shocking happened very soon. When the first two blade lights crossed each other, the two great cultivators soon discovered that a huge gap in the formation that they had set up together had been broken. This gap was enough for Lu Ping to take advantage of it and use it as a loophole to escape from the formation. However, what happened next shocked the two great cultivators even more. After the first two blade lights cut a big hole, because Lu Ping didn't take the opportunity to escape, the attack that the two great cultivators had prepared completely failed. Then, the third blade light casually slashed through the air. With a sound like silk tearing, the expression of the great cultivator who held the folding fan changed instantly. Then, he spat out a mouthful of blood. With a boom, the entire sandstorm suddenly collapsed toward the center. The yellow sand refining formation that the two great cultivators had set up together was completely destroyed. At the moment when the formation was destroyed, two pieces of paper slowly floated down from the air. If it wasn't the surface of the folding fan, what else could it be? However, at this time, the formation of the yellow sand refining formation had been torn into two pieces. The folding fan was a spirit treasure that the great cultivator of Wuxing School had kept for hundreds of years. Now that the fan was torn, it directly hurt his vitality. However, Lu Ping couldn't care so much. The moment the sandstorm formation was broken, a stream of light dashed out and tried to break through to the west. However, right at the instant Lu Ping charged out of the formation, he heard a voice suddenly resound by his ears. "Hey, isn't this Northern Sea's fellow Daoist Lu Tianping? Fellow Daoist, where are you going in such a hurry?" The voice was friendly, but in Lu Ping's ears, it was more hateful than the crisp sound of the King of Hell's command. This person was Mu Changsheng, the first direct disciple of the Wood Slayer sect, who ranked third among the 5 Juzi of Wuxing School, whom Lu Ping had met in the South Sea. Lu Ping fought against the two great cultivators of Wuxing School on his own. Although he broke through the siege of the two great cultivators with the help of the spiritual treasure and the sword of real spirit, and seriously injured one of them, how much strength did Lu Ping have left? At this time, Mu Changsheng, who could be considered an outstanding figure in the entire cultivation world, came out of nowhere. Obviously, it was intentional. Although Lu Ping knew something was wrong the moment he heard the voice, when Lu Ping found the source of the voice with his divine thoughts and tried his best to defend himself, Lu Ping's expression changed. The supreme divine ability, colorful petals formula. Mu Changsheng had actually also practiced this heaven-defying divine ability in the wood property, and he used it on Lu Ping as soon as they met. Obviously, this person had been nearby for a long time, but he never showed up. Instead, he secretly prepared this divine ability, waiting for Lu Ping to break out of the siege and give Lu Ping this fatal blow. The supreme divine ability, colorful petals formula, was a heaven-defying divine ability that was specially used to increase one's lifespan. Cultivators who were hit by this divine ability might not be seriously injured, but their lifespan would often be reduced by a certain amount. The spirit treasure in Mu Changsheng's hand was a flower basket filled with 108 different flowers. At this moment, all of them were falling down from above Lu Ping's head. At the very least, they were much more pleasing to the eye than Jiang Tianlin's 108 green leaves. Mu Changsheng's spirit treasure was a flower basket that was filled with flowers of different colors. However, this pleasing scene was a method to kill. No matter what, it had to spoil the scenery. Therefore, at least Jiang Tianlin Laozu's fallen leaves looked more appropriate when he used this divine ability. Although the colorful petals formula could increase one's lifespan without harming one's life, anyone who suddenly lost decades or even hundreds of years of their lifespan would definitely fall into a state of weakness. This was undoubtedly the best time to take someone's life. In fact, although the art of fallen petals profusion was said to not harm people's lives, and this was true, there were countless cases of people being weakened by this divine ability, causing their strength to plummet, and then being easily killed by their opponents. Although this divine ability did not kill people, there had been many people who had died because of this divine ability. Mu Changsheng was full of confidence. He was sure that even if Lu Ping escaped from the siege of the two seniors of his sect, he would still be an arrow at the end of its flight. Naturally, he had prepared more than just the colorful petals formula. As long as he made his move at the right time, this North Sea water sword immortal, who had made a name for himself in the Central Plains for decades and was almost about to take the title of the #1 cultivator of the third generation in the cultivation world, would fall by his hands. The #1 cultivator of the third generation. Yes, this was the title. Although the heirs of the 6 Holy Lands, the heirs of dozens of large sects, and many rising geniuses made the third generation of the cultivation world seem to be a group of heroes, although no one had mentioned the title of the #1 cultivator of the third generation, in fact, no one would care about it. Moreover, the competition between them was unusually fierce. Back then, the first heir of the Crystal Palace, Qin Shijun, was the first of the 3 generations of practitioners to pass the first lightning tribulation and reach the mid-Dharma stage. For a time, he was praised by the entire cultivation world as the #1 cultivator of the third generation. However, in just 5 years, the first heir of the 6 Holy Lands had passed the first lightning tribulation. 10 years later, even the second and third disciples of many large sects had reached the mid-Dharma stage. Qin Shijun's title of the #1 cultivator of the third generation seemed to be on his head, and in less than 5 years, it had become a scene of hundreds of flowers blooming. However, in the past 20 years, the most famous person among the 3 generations of practitioners was undoubtedly the North Sea practitioner, Lu Tianping, who had been roaming the central mainland. Before the Pyongyang battle at the Qingming River, Lu Tianping had consecutively defeated Chang Chun, the head of the 3 Talents House of the 9 Mystics House, and Sima Chongfeng, the head of the West Pavilion of the Skyward Pavilion. After that, he had ridden on the Black Tortoise to swim in the Qingming River and fought with the great practitioner of the Green Sea Snakes, Chu Yuntian, to a draw. Following that, he had single-handedly defeated the head of the 4 elders of the Tenma people, Ma Li. That was not the end. After that, Lu Tianping had sparred with Yuan Long of the spiritual Great Ape clan for several days. After that, Yuan Long had admitted that he was no match for Lu Tianping. After that, Lu Tianping had single-handedly defeated the 3 heads of the 9 Mystics House, the 7 Stars House, the 8 Trigrams House, and the 9 Palaces House. He had also captured the head of the 8 Trigrams House and saved the Green Fox 9 bandits, who were rather famous in the cultivation world of the north. After that, there was another rumor in the cultivation world. It was said that before the 9 Mystics House was besieged by Mara, Lu Tianping had single-handedly charged into the 9 Mystics Mountain and faced the joint attacks of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 5th generation housemasters of the 9 Mystics House, only to be lightly injured and forced to retreat. In the following 10 years, there had been no news of this Lu Tianping in the Central Plains. Even so, the illustrious battle achievements that Lu Tianping had left behind in the Central Plains over the past few years were enough to overshadow all the heirs and geniuses of the same generation, especially when Lu Ping had single-handedly defeated the 4th elder of the Tenma people on the Qingming River and broke through the siege of the 9 Mystics House's 4 heirs. It seemed that after the rise of the second-generation cultivators had been suppressed by Xiao Baiyu with a single sword strike, the The situation of the third-generation cultivators was finally going to be broken. The cultivation world was going to produce another outstanding genius that could surpass all the other cultivators of the same generation. Chapter 1222. In fact, the current Lu Tianping was already the first of the third generation in the entire world of cultivation. Mu Changsheng knew very well that if Lu Tianping, who had emerged from the North Sea, was the most popular person to win the title of the first of the third generation in the world of cultivation, then today, Lu Tianping was able to break through the joint attack of two Dharma adepts from Wuxing School, and even seriously injure one of the Dharma adepts and tear apart the array diagram of the spirit treasure. This meant that Lu Tianping's title of the first of the third generation was indeed true. But so what? Today, I will let you die by my hands. This title of the first of the third generation has only been won in the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. Who in the world will know about it? Mu Changsheng laughed sinisterly in his heart, but his hands did not hesitate at all. Just as the flower basket spirit treasure fell from mid-air, a huge tortoise Dharma power had already risen behind Mu Changsheng. It stretched out its tortoise head and roared at the sky. The moment Mu Changsheng displayed the colorful petals of the fallen petals, he had already summoned his Dharma power to participate in the battle, preparing for the next thunderous blow. Obviously, he wanted to kill Lu Tianping. Just as the sky full of petals surrounded Lu Tianping, who was caught off guard, in the perception of Mu Changsheng's divine thoughts, Lu Ping seemed to have made some sort of response. But Mu Changsheng did not take it to heart, because he could already clearly feel that under the ravaging of the colorful petals of the fallen petals, an endless stream of strong life force was being absorbed by his supreme magic power. This idiot, he is really an arrow at the end of its flight. He actually did not even have the slightest resistance to this magic power. With such a strong life force, it seems that this blow can take away a full 108 years of his life. Right now, he must be extremely weak. I'm afraid that even a core forging adept can easily end his life. Mu Changsheng was ecstatic. The giant tortoise Dharma power behind him, with a strong pure yang aura, roared and rushed towards Lu Tianping, who was covered by his magic power. This was the real time to beat a drowning dog. Mu Changsheng, who prided himself on his meticulous planning, would not make the stupid mistake of showing off in front of a loser. No matter when, a poisonous snake that had not been killed would always have a fatal blow. Although the colorful petals of the fallen petals was extremely difficult to resist, and almost anyone who was hit by it would lose their life force, this did not mean that there was no way to resist it. Apart from dodging, the most effective way was to weaken the power of this supreme magic power. Although it could not be completely removed, at least it could weaken the effect this strange magic power had on one's body. This kind of supreme magic power, which was said to be inherited from Taoist Chan, could at most erase 108 years of a cultivator's life force in one fell swoop. Even if the cultivator had enough life force, after suddenly losing more than 100 years of his life force, he would probably be extremely weak in a short period of time. Perhaps even Laozu, who had become a true spirit and was said to have a life force of 2,000 years, would not be an exception. According to Mu Changsheng's estimation, with Lu Ping's ability to fight against two great cultivators, even if he was at his peak, if he was hit by his magic power, even if he tried his best to resist, he was confident that he could erase 20 to 30 years of Lu Ping's life force. Even if this would not cause a fatal impact on Lu Ping's strength, Mu Changsheng was confident that it would be enough to deal with him. Moreover, at this time, Lu Ping did not have much strength left after the series of fierce battles. In Mu Changsheng's opinion, his sneak attack would at least take away 67 years of Lu Ping's life force, enough for Lu Ping to completely become a fish. However, in reality, the result of this attack was still beyond Mu Changsheng's expectations. The life force was dissipating so quickly, in Mu Changsheng's opinion, it was enough for Lu Ping to lose nearly 100 years of his life force. At this moment, the giant tortoise Dharma power rushed into the sky full of rain of flowers with a deafening roar. This time, he was definitely going to die, right? A giant purple-gold claw suddenly stretched out under the sky full of rain of flowers. Under Mu Changsheng's distorted expression of disbelief, The claw pressed down on the head of the giant tortoise Dharma power that was rushing over. The moment the giant tortoise Dharma power rushed over with unparalleled momentum, it stood upside down in a sorry state, and then fell hard to the ground with all four legs in the sky. Amidst the sound of ho-ho, Mu Changsheng's dry mouth could no longer speak. In the end, a few words came out of his mouth with great difficulty, but he said, "How could this be? From the complementary attack of the two sides, how could Mu Changsheng not know that the strength Lu Ping reserved far exceeded his estimation, and it seemed that his magic power did not have the slightest effect on Lu Ping. When the claw struck out, how did Lu Ping feel weak after being affected by the magic power? He was not weakened by the fallen petals art. How did he do it? Bang! There was no time for Mu Changsheng to think too much. The sky full of rain of flowers was scattered, and Lu Ping rushed out of the fallen petals art unscathed, and then quickly flew into the distance. Although he avoided the fallen petals art and blocked the giant tortoise Dharma power, at this time, he was really an arrow at the end of its flight, and really did not dare to stay any longer. Moreover, from the time when Mu Changsheng launched a sneak attack on Lu Ping, to when Lu Ping broke the fallen petals art and escaped, although it was only a split second, the two great cultivators who had their yellow sand refining formation broken by Lu Ping had already rushed towards Lu Ping again. At this time, how could he dare to stay any longer? And just after Lu Ping broke through the fallen petals art, there was also a strong fragrance that filled the sky, including the fragrance of the 108 flowers, and a strange fragrance that Mu Changsheng felt very familiar. The appearance of this fragrance even made Mu Changsheng feel a special attraction to the fallen petals art. Could it be that this fragrance was the reason why Lu Tianping was able to break the fallen petals art? It was just that this fragrance smelled very familiar, but why couldn't he remember it? Just when Mu Changsheng was surprised, he clearly saw that when Lu Ping broke through the encirclement and went far away, he suddenly looked back and stared at him. What kind of gaze was this? It was calm but extremely deep, and even Mu Changsheng could not see the anger, mockery, or joy that should have been in this gaze. There was only a kind of deathly stillness, as if Lu Tianping looked at him like he was looking at a dead man. "Are you still thinking of revenge?" The corner of Mu Changsheng's mouth curled up, and he said to himself, "Then you must have the ability." Although Mu Changsheng was sure that Lu Tianping of Wuxing School would definitely die in the future, and he even sneered at the look in Lu Ping's eyes, Lu Ping's look before he left had always been like a shadow in his mind, covering him with a layer of impression. That fellow actually broke through your fallen petals profusion art and was still able to escape so easily. One of the two great cultivators of Wuxing School who had joined hands to attack Lu Ping, Laozu, who held the Yellow Mountain Peak spiritual treasure, rushed over first. Seeing this, he could not help but ask Mu Changsheng, "Greetings, Martial Uncle Gu." Mu Changsheng sensed this and hurriedly bowed to the old man beside him. After a moment of hesitation, he nodded and said, "Not only that, I think this guy even completely avoided the attack of the fallen petals art. At the moment when he broke the divine sense and fought with me, I didn't even notice that his strength was weakened at all." Cough, cough, cough. The other great cultivator, who had suffered some injuries because the formation diagram of the spiritual treasure was destroyed by Lu Ping, also rushed over at this time. However, after he asked about the fragrance mixed with the fragrance of the flowers, he was immediately surprised and said, "Hey, this smell, is this the Wonder Dew?" "Oh, that's right. That guy from the North Sea actually used the Wonder Dew to block your fallen petals art. So that's how it is." What a clever idea, what a great skill, but it is indeed effective. Wonder Dew? Martial Uncle Shu, are you joking? Mu Changsheng asked in disbelief. At the same time, he roughly understood why his divine sense was able to destroy so many of Lu Ping's divine sense. However, even though the Wonder Dew contained a lot of vitality and was a spiritual item used to refine top-grade longevity pills, it was not a longevity pill in the end. In order to counteract his divine sense, how much Wonder Dew would be needed? I heard that the North Sea boy used to have a nickname in the North Sea, the Boy of Many Treasures. In the past, this nickname and his birth in the North Sea was a joke in the cultivation world. Previously, his strength was no longer a joke, but from today onwards, who would dare to think that the title of Boy of Many Treasures is also a joke? Ah, The Wonder Dew is truly a reckless waste of natural resources. How many drops would be needed to counteract the effect of your divine sense? It seems that we have really missed a human-shaped treasure trove. After escaping from us this time, the boy from Beihai is going to step on our shoulders to be the #1 person among the practitioners of the third generation. Alas, I didn't expect that after hundreds of years, there will be another person like Xiao Baiyu who is the best among the practitioners of the same generation, and we have become the background of his success. The words of the two great cultivators of Wuxing School made Mu Changsheng feel even more annoyed. Seeing that there was no hope of chasing after Lu Ping, Mu Changsheng hurriedly bid farewell to the two great cultivators, then turned around and flew toward the section of Qingming River where Shui Jiro and the others had joined hands to ambush him. Several hundred miles away, after shaking off the pursuit of Wuxing School, Lu Ping finally stopped. He coughed violently and spat out a mouthful of bloody foam onto the ground. Only then did Lu Ping rummage through his storage magic item and find an exquisite jade essence bottle. From within, he found a pink medicinal pill and swallowed it. Then, he held 2 supreme-grade spirit stones in his hands and began to work hard to restore the nearly exhausted real essence in his body. Fortunately, I have the spiritual explosion technique this time. Otherwise, to neutralize Mu Changsheng's profusion of fallen petals, I don't know how much Wonder Dew I would have to pay. Chapter 1223. When unleashed with its full power, the colorful petals art could erase a cultivator's lifespan by 108 years. At that time, although Lu Ping was suddenly attacked by Mu Changsheng and his own strength was at its lowest, even if he used all his strength to resist, he would at most lose 20 to 30 years of his lifespan. However, the moment Mu Changsheng made his move, Lu Ping already knew that this Mu Changsheng definitely had a backup plan. This person had been planning this for a long time, and certainly did not only have the power for this one attack. But if Lu Ping used all his strength to block the colorful petals art, he would certainly not have the spare strength to block the attack of the giant tortoise. However, at this time, Lu Ping directly threw out half of the Wonder Dew. After a total of 12 drops of the Wonder Dew were stimulated by the spirit explosion technique, a huge amount of life force spread out, immediately satisfying the absorption of the colorful petals art. It must be known that each drop of the Wonder Dew could be used as a spirit guide to refine a 30-year purple gold longevity pill. Although the huge amount of life force contained in it was not comparable to 30 years of lifespan, it was still at least 8 to 10 years. The 12 drops of the Wonder Dew combined with the spirit explosion technique, a secret technique that maximized the potential of the spiritual materials, emitted a rich life force that was enough to confuse Mu Changsheng's perception. Fortunately, Lu Ping's method saved him a lot of time. He used a mouthful of true yuan to regain his composure and immediately launched a head-on attack at the giant tortoise avatar. Meanwhile, the dragon avatar in his heart-core space cast a spatial spell. It stretched out its dragon claw from the void and pressed down on Mu Changsheng's giant tortoise avatar. The powerful and mysterious avatar immediately caused Mu Changsheng's giant tortoise avatar to suffer a great loss. Right after Mu Changsheng and the two great cultivators of the sect left, the nearby space shook, and Xiao Baiyu and the others suddenly appeared nearby. Yuan Pokong immediately exclaimed, "Amazing! This kid was actually able to achieve this. I'm afraid he's not inferior to you, old Xiao, from all those years ago. I didn't expect that such a monster would appear in the third generation of cultivators." Xiao Baiyu's usually calm expression also carried a trace of solemnity as he said, "Perhaps I would have lost to him if I were to risk my life back then." 7 Fan Laozu, who rarely spoke, also raised his head in surprise and said, "How could this kid have such strength? Looking at his swordsmanship, I'm afraid it's not as sharp as yours back then." Xiao Baiyu nodded and said, "It's true that it's not as sharp, but it's more vigorous. This kid's true essence is unimaginably rich, and he actually still had the strength to counterattack after being ambushed by 2 great cultivators. But don't be deceived by this kid. This kid isn't a pure sword cultivator at all. Nonsense." Yuan Pokong opened his mouth and said, "Of course I can tell that this kid isn't a pure sword cultivator. A sword cultivator wouldn't use so many divine abilities and spirit treasures that aren't flying swords. Nowadays, How many people are like all of you who cling to a sword and refuse to let go? It's never bad to have more skills, and there'll always be a time when you learn something else. I heard that this kid is also a rather famous pill refinement grandmaster. At his age, he has such accomplishments in both cultivation and alchemy. You, Xiao Baiyu, are far from being able to reach that level all those years ago. Xiao Baiyu shook his head and said, if I'm distracted, I won't be able to reach the supreme realm of one sword to destroy all laws. Yuan Pokong sneered and said, one sword to destroy all laws. So what? Jiao Daoren was still suppressed by Peng Daoren for eternity. Xiao Baiyu explained, although Jiao Daoren left behind the explanation of one sword to destroy all laws, in fact, even he himself hadn't really reached such a realm. Otherwise, even if Peng Daoren had the number one divine weapon for opening the world, I'm afraid he would still die under Jiao Daoren's sword. Yuan Pokong shouted, look, even Jiao Daoren himself hasn't mastered one sword to destroy all laws. Do you think you, Xiao Baiyu, can? If you don't have faith, you won't succeed. Xiao Baiyu said indifferently. After that, he ignored Yuan Pokong's disapproving look and changed the topic to Lu Ping. He continued, what I mean is that this kid's trump card is much more brilliant than his swordsmanship. His swordsmanship is just a layer of clothing he uses to conceal his strength. Oh. This time, not only Yuan Pokong, but also Qi Fan Laozu and Yuan Xiaotian were a little surprised. Feng Lu, who had been silent all this while, said, no wonder, so that's how it is. Impossible, this kid's swordsmanship is already so powerful, then what is he hiding? Yuan Xiaotian and Qi Fan Laozu's faces were a little ugly. Obviously, only Xiao Baiyu and Feng Lu could see Lu Ping's true strength, and it seemed that Feng Lu was still a little hesitant. It was only after hearing Xiao Baiyu's words that he finally confirmed it. As for the other three pure young Laozu, they obviously thought that Lu Ping's most powerful magical power was on the flying sword. Xiao Baiyu shook his head and said, I'm not too sure about this. Why don't we, old Yuan, test it out? The other pure young Laozu were a little tempted by Yuan Pokong's idea, but Yuan Pokong's motive was probably for fun. Xiao Baiyu thought about it and finally rejected Yuan Pokong's idea, although he also wanted to know what this young cultivator was hiding. He said, let's not pay attention to him for the time being. After all, he can't affect the overall situation now. However, the matter of Wuxing School and the two water veins is imminent. At this time, we must not be distracted. At this time, what Lu Ping, Xiao Baiyu, and the others did not know was that Wuxing School had opened up the Green Jade Canal and connected the two water veins while Zhoushuan Tower was besieged by Mara's army. This news made the whole Wuxing School furious, and it also surprised Xiao Baiyu and the others. People from both sides concluded that this news must have been deliberately released by Lu Tianping. But didn't he know that by doing so, his 3 followers of the green sea snakes would be killed? If the 5 Elements sect really killed the 3 spirits out of humiliation and anger, the Emerald Sea Spirit Snake Clan would certainly seek revenge for the smallest grievance, but they would not be able to do anything to the 5 Elements sect that was far away in the central region. Instead, Lu Tianping would probably have to bear the thunderous wrath of the Emerald Sea Spirit Snake Clan first. In fact, after the matter of Wuxing School stealing the water vein of Qingming River was exposed, Samling was almost killed. But for some reason, he survived and was handed over to Tu Gaoshan, who had the highest cultivation among the 5 great Juzi, to watch over him. However, the truth of the matter soon came to light. Zhoushuan Tower, which had been besieged by Mara's army for more than 10 years, suddenly had 2 cultivators escape from inside by some unknown means. They brought out the latest news of Zhoushuan Tower and the real strength of Mara's army. And these 2 were none other than the first pure young cultivator among the second-generation cultivators of Zhoushuan Tower, Laozu 8th sister Zhu, and the first heir of Zhoushuan Tower, master of a Yuan Tower, Wei Yizhan. Although only these 2 people appeared in Zhoushuan Tower at this time, they stood on the highest moral ground. The water vein of Qingming River was an important means for Zhoushuan Tower to resist the siege of Mara's army. At this time, because of the interference and weakening of Wuxing School, Zhoushuan Tower's own defense power was greatly reduced, and they had paid a huge price for this. Wuxing School's move was obviously to take the opportunity to frame Zhoushuan Tower. While the whole cultivation world began to help Zhoushuan Tower, Wuxing School was undoubtedly condoning the disaster of Mara. Even eighth sister Zhu said something even more shocking. She said, with the example of Magic Cloud City, our sect has to make the fastest plan. That is, this great disaster of Mara against Zhoushuan Tower may also be the result of someone's connivance and guidance. But there is no demon clan force like Endless Mountain in Central Region for such a large scale of Mara's army to gather. Her words directly pointed out that Wuxing School was the driving force behind the siege of Zhoushuan Tower by Mara's army. For a moment, the whole cultivation world was in an uproar. Although Wuxing School strongly denied it, its act of stealing the water vein of Qingming River had at least solidified the reputation of taking advantage of the situation. What's more, the disaster of Mara was the common enemy of the whole cultivation world, including both the human and the demon clans. This time, Wuxing School's behavior was really despicable. While the whole cultivation world was shocked by 8th Sister Zhu's accusation of Wuxing School, Skyward Pavilion took the lead in showing solidarity with Zhoushuan Tower. At the same time, they also sent a pure young practitioner and 3 grand practitioners up the river to join the rescue of Zhoushuan Tower. This was not only to reinforce Zhoushuan Tower, but also to test the pressure on Wuxing School. After all, most of the water vein of Qingming River had always been divided between Zhoushuan Tower and Skyward Pavilion. This time, Wuxing School's interference was undoubtedly weakening Skyward Pavilion's interests. Unfortunately, Skyward Pavilion was also in constant trouble at this time. In addition to the areas of influence near the sea and on land that were gradually affected by the disaster of Mara, the Crystal Palace's infiltration into the mainland of the Central Plains was also a headache for Skyward Pavilion. Heavenly Moon Sect had been forced to withdraw all of their strength from the sea. At this time, it was already commendable that they could send a pure young practitioner and 3 grand practitioners to reinforce Zhoushuan Tower. Originally, Lingyun Valley also had some use for the water vein of Qingming River. Unfortunately, Magic Cloud City had been destroyed. At this time, Lingyun Valley was entangled with the Endless Mountains. Although they had shown solidarity, they really could not spare any strength to reinforce Zhoushuan Tower. At this time, the cultivation world of the Central Plains could not help but look at Ziyang Palace at the edge of the Western Wilderness. As a holy land with the deepest hidden strength among the 5 holy lands of the Central Plains, Ziyang Palace's attitude was undoubtedly the most important. However, what was regrettable was that Ziyang Palace did not have the slightest reaction. Just when the cultivation world was guessing why Ziyang Palace was acting like this, a shocking news suddenly came from the Western Wilderness. The Pegasus clan, the Green-Eyed Golden Condor clan, the Koi clan, and the Rainbow Tiger clan from the western part of the Northern Ice Plains had joined forces to attack Western Wilderness Palace. As the only large human sect in Western Wasteland, the Purple Sun Palace's bridgehead had fallen under the joint attack of the 4 great demon clans. Although the Purple Sun Palace had immediately responded to rescue them, 2 of the 3 great cultivators of Western Wasteland Palace had already died. The remaining one had escorted the last of Western Wasteland Palace's elites to the Purple Sun Palace. However, the forces of the Purple Sun Palace and the human race had all retreated from Western Wasteland after this battle. Chapter 1224. At this time, Lu Ping did not know that the whole cultivation world was in chaos, nor did he know that Wuxing School's plot for the water vein of Qingming River had been well known all over the world. Because of this, Samling almost died in the hands of Wuxing School. At this time, he was taken by Dabao into an underground cave, which was dozens of feet deep, to heal his wounds and restore his genuine essence. This series of fierce battles had consumed most of Lu Ping's genuine essence. If it were not for the great improvement of his cultivation after more than 10 years of closed-door training in the water vein of Qingming River, Lu Ping would have collapsed in the face of the continuous battles of Wuxing School. Time passed day by day. At this time, Lu Ping was also worried. He did not know how to rescue Samling from Wuxing School. He did not even know where Samling was imprisoned at this time. Moreover, At this time, Lu Ping could not inquire about it, because he knew very well that Wuxing School must be heavily guarded at this time because they had successfully stolen the water vein of Qingming River. If he were a pure young Laozu like Xiao Baiyu, naturally he would not care about Wuxing School's vigilance at this time. But if it were Lu Ping, he would not be able to do so. Let's go and have a look first. If it doesn't work, I have to turn to Xiao Baiyu for help. Even if what they are planning at this time can turn the whole cultivation world upside down, I can't care too much about it. Lu Ping secretly made up his mind, but he still had to adjust his strength to the best. Although he did not know what Xiao Baiyu and the others were planning, at least he knew that Xiao Baiyu and the others had already known at this time that Wuxing School's plan to steal the water vein of Qingming River, and they would definitely not let Wuxing School succeed. At that time, there was bound to be a big battle. At that time, whether he joined Xiao Baiyu's gang or not, it would be the best time to rescue Samling. In fact, this time did not make Lu Ping wait for long. Only about half a month later, Lu Ping suddenly felt the whole earth was suddenly shaking. Lu Ping looked at Dabao, who was also surprised and confused, and reached out his hand to summon Linglong's wine tripod, and asked, "Linglong, do you know what is going on?" The wine tripod fell to the ground, and Linglong lay on the edge of the tripod for a moment, and said, "What else is going on?" "Someone is communicating with the earth vein, and it is the large-scale kind, many times more brilliant than your method of expanding the island with the blue seas into mulberry fields formula." Lu Ping was stunned, as if he suddenly thought of something, and said, "It is Wuxing School. They are going to open up the Green Jade Canal." "Open up the canal?" Dabao was even more confused, and said, "Isn't Wuxing School going to communicate with the water vein of Qingming River and merge it with the water vein of Yulon River? Why do they want to communicate with the earth vein?" Lu Ping knocked hard on Dabao's head, and ignored Dabao, who was gritting his teeth and screaming in pain, and said angrily, "Where is your cleverness in the past? If you want to communicate with the two water veins, you have to first open up the canal, and then connect the two water veins together. Doesn't that mean that the opening of the Green Jade Canal requires digging ditches?" Dabao rubbed his head, and said, "Then just dig it. There is no need to connect with the earth vein, right?" Lu Ping was a little speechless, and then he remembered that although Dabao was an earth cultivator, he was an authentic demon cultivator born overseas, and his knowledge of the vast land of the central region was very shallow. So he explained with a smile, "Wuxing School can't wait to communicate with the two water veins secretly, so how could they dare to openly dig ditches? Naturally, the method they used was to survey the earth vein first, and then set up a formation to connect the earth vein from Wuxing School to Qingming River. That is why they finally started the plan to communicate with the two water veins after Joshuan Tower was besieged by Mara's army for more than 10 years. After all the arrangements were completed, now Wuxing School activated the formation, and all the earth veins along the way will be corrected. The ground will collapse automatically to form ditches, and the two water veins will be connected along the ditches. In this way, although the water veins of the two water veins have not been connected, at least after the water veins are connected, it will be much easier to communicate with the water veins again." Lu Ping's explanation was clear enough, but Dabao knew many of Lu Ping's secrets, so he asked, "Now that Wuxing School doesn't have the spirit treasure, how will they communicate with the two water veins? You have to know that ever since the heavens were split open, there have been many sects that thought of communicating with the two great water veins, and it's not like there haven't been any that have implemented it. However, the two great water veins' strange incompatible characteristics are something that even the true spirit ancestor can't do anything about." Lu Ping shook his head and said, "I don't know, but Wuxing School has been planning for many years. How could they not have considered this? This time, the appearance of Xiao Baiyu and the pure young Laozu is obviously to stop Wuxing School from connecting the two water veins. It can be seen that Wuxing School must have found a way to merge the two water veins. Otherwise, they wouldn't have mobilized so many people." Of course, Lu Ping didn't know what method Wuxing School used, but he summoned the spirit treasure from the core space. Praying Mantis still looked very arrogant, and the two big blades on Lu Ping's shoulders were cutting the air back and forth from time to time. "Communicate with the water veins?" Hearing Lu Ping's question, Praying Mantis was still confused, but then he shook his head and said, "I'm not good at that, but I'm very capable of cutting something. Whether it's the earth veins, the water veins, the fire veins, the spiritual veins, or anything like that, I'm sure I can cut it accurately, and I can cut it more beautifully than anyone else, without any sloppiness. Lu Ping thought for a while, and then he put his divine thoughts into the spirit treasure and carefully examined it for a long time. Even Lu Ping himself didn't know how many times he had studied the mystery of the body of praying mantis. Although this time, after more than 10 years of closed-door training, Lu Ping's cultivation and strength had improved a lot, he still gained nothing. Sometimes, Lu Ping himself even suspected whether the spirit treasure 2 parts was some kind of smoke bomb deliberately released by Wuxing School, or perhaps it was used to attract the existence of something, because in Lu Ping's view, the spirit treasure 2 parts was just an ordinary second tribulation spirit treasure. At most, the material and power of the spirit treasure were a little stronger than ordinary second tribulation spirit treasures. Apart from that, he really couldn't see any other mystery. Lu Ping shook his head, not knowing whether it was because of disappointment or something else, or perhaps there was indeed some secret hidden in it that Lu Ping hadn't discovered yet. After all, legend had it that the spirit treasure 2 parts was a treasure left by the founder of the Broken Water sect in Wuxing School. After all, the Broken Water Laozu was a being who had achieved the real spirit. If there was any mystery left in it, it was not something that Lu Ping, a minor repairs at the middle Dharma level, could find. After all, after this spirit treasure was lost from Wuxing School, it had been passed around several times in the hands of many great divines in the world of practice. If there was any mystery in it, it would have been found out by them long ago. Or maybe they could take advantage of this time to communicate with the water vein in Wuxing School to take a look. This spirit treasure came from Wuxing School. If there was really some secret of the Broken Water sect hidden in it, and this time Wuxing School communicated with the 2 water veins to solve the hidden flaw of the Broken Water sect, then this communication with the water vein was an opportunity to thoroughly find out the hidden secret of the spirit treasure 2 parts. This idea flashed in Lu Ping's mind. Of course, he knew that this so-called opportunity was actually a risk, even no different from courting death. Lu Ping turned his palm, and the 2 parts of the spirit treasure disappeared. Just when Lu Ping was pondering whether he should secretly check it or even take a look at it from a distance, Linglong, who had been placed by Lu Ping's side, popped her head out of the wine tripod again. With a strange look on her face, she said, "Brother, it's such a strange feeling. Did you notice anything?" Lu Ping was stunned and said, "What?" Linglong glanced at Dabao and saw that Dabao was also confused, so she said, Linglong felt a call, a mysterious feeling, as if there was a powerful and superior thing that wanted to force Linglong to surrender. Besides, Linglong also felt that if she hadn't been refined by you, I'm afraid that she would have already been unable to control herself and would have been called by that mysterious existence. In Lu Ping's eyes, Linglong's words were extremely mysterious. It could be seen that she was serious, and it seemed that she was not joking. Especially when Lu Ping summoned the other spirit treasures one by one and asked them, but except for Linglong, no one had such a mysterious feeling. Lu Ping was even more shocked in his heart. Lu Ping thought for a moment and finally seemed to have made up his mind. He said, "Linglong, can you sense where this mysterious feeling is coming from? Perhaps we should secretly go and take a look." A few rays of light flew from the direction of the 9 mystical tower towards the place where Lu Ping had clashed with the Wuxing School cultivators. An irascible voice yelled, oh no, the 9 mystical tower is really down on its luck. Or is it because the Laozu sect has done too many immoral things? From what I know, the 9 mystical tower has imprisoned and raised many top-level demons as their spiritual slaves. They can be killed at any time to raise their cultivation, strength, and lifespan. This is extremely cruel. I'm afraid this is retribution for provoking such a large-scale Mara army. Just now, when I ran over to take a look, even I, a great pure young Laozu, felt my scalp go numb. If I hadn't reacted in time, I might have been surrounded and killed by 2 heavenly demons and a dozen or so asuras. When the rays of light dissipated, it was Xiao Baiyu and the other pure young Laozu sects. The long-winded words from before were naturally spoken by Bright Ape Yuan Pokong. At this moment, the pure young Laozu sects all had ugly expressions on their faces. When Yuan Xiaotian heard Yuan Pokong's nonsense, she couldn't help but say, "You demons have killed fewer people. When it comes to cruelty, the human race cannot compare to you demons. If the 9 mystical tower being besieged by Mara's army is retribution, could it be that Mara's army is in cahoots with the demon race?" These words were a little harsh. Yuan Pokong had a short temper and was about to explode when he heard this. Xiao Baiyu frowned and said, "Okay, now is not the time to talk about this. We have some understanding of the situation at the 9 mystical tower. Compared to what 8th sisters you said about the strength of Mara's army, I'm afraid that Mara's army is still hiding some of their strength." Yuan Pokong had nowhere to vent his anger, and he cursed, "Mother f***, even Moro has learned to hide his strength in these days." Yuan Xiaotian snorted coldly and didn't reply. However, the pure young Laozu sects all had ugly expressions on their faces. 7 Laozu sects opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but at this moment, their expressions changed in unison. Muffled rumbling sounds came from far away, and the tremors naturally couldn't shake these existences. In the end, it was Feng Lu who still had a cold expression on his face and said, "They have made a move." You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.